Our tale unfolds in a different realm, deep within the treacherous Chen Dynasty. The emperor has fallen, leaving a power vacuum, and the throne has been claimed by the most notorious good-for-nothing failure of a son. This is Tu Ye, a man destined for mediocrity. By all rights, his capable brother should rule, but corrupt vultures sought a puppet they could control. Scratching his head in confusion, our protagonist wonders why fate cast him as this monumental loser. Obviously, he wasn't born here. He was transmigrated from Earth, a humble video editor tired of looping clips of dancing idols. He loathed the grind until a mysterious prompt flashed on his screen. Which dynasty would you rule? Most would hesitate, but he just scoffed. Calling it a stupid question, he launched a keyboard crusade. The past was garbage, he typed. No discounts, just disease and death. Life was harder and worse, no dancing girls on screens, but karma has a twisted sense of humor. Now sitting on the dragon throne, he wonders if this is a cosmic prank. He who despised the ancient world is trapped in it. Suddenly the bracelet on his wrist pulses with arcane light. A mechanical voice echoes in his mind. I am the artificial intelligence Ben, or Benin for short. The protagonist jumps in shock. He is clearly a novice at this reincarnation game. The system issues a mission that sounds absolutely insane. Let the Chen Dynasty burn to ash and you shall return home. Meanwhile, a silver-haired beauty watches him closely. She wonders what this trash prince is plotting. Usually he offers a lecherous grin, but today, his aura has shifted. Tu Ye glances sideways, sensing her gaze. Who is she, he thinks. Instantly, a holographic interface flickers to life. The system reveals the harsh truth. She is one of his concubines, but her true purpose is surveillance. With the system, no secret is safe from his eyes. Her name is Xiao Su, a flower hiding poison placed here solely to spy on him. She feels a chill run down her spine. Is she imagining it, or is the puppet looking right through her soul? Rubbing his chin, Tu Ye admires her lethal beauty. She was sent to watch him, but her charm is a dangerous weapon. Did he see through my disguise, she worries? Has he awakened? Suddenly, a voice cuts through the tension. A long-haired official steps forward, feigning concern. Your Majesty seems distracted. What weighs on the dragon's mind? Tu Ye doesn't need to guess. This man is a viper. The status window reveals an intelligence of 94. He is the Prime Minister, the mastermind who placed a fool on the throne to rule from the shadows. But he wasn't alone. Nearby stood Minister Zhao, a man of immense influence and bloodline power. He is also Xiao Su's father. While the girl tries to decode Tu Ye's behavior, the emperor is trembling not from fear, but at their monstrous stats. Minister Zhao sneers. Are you not worried your throne will crumble? Tu Ye's reply shocks them all. I want it to crumble, he thinks. Let this whole country burn. Minister Xiao is stunned by this defiance. The boy is acting out, Xiao muses. He must be terrified of his brother Tu Su, the rightful heir leading the armies. Now the puzzle pieces fit. They place Tu Ye here to block the capable brother. It is a classic coup, Xiao reminds him. We defied the heavens to put you here. The threat hangs heavy in the air. He knocks disrespectfully on the late emperor's coffin. The dead stay silent, he smirks. He won't rise to kill me, but your brother, Tu Su. That is a different story. The news of the emperor's death is still a secret. Holding up the Imperial Jade Seal, Xiao hisses. Use this decree, sentence your brother to death before he returns. Tu Ye realizes their game. They need his hand to sign the death warrant, ensuring he remains their shield. Even as the king of everything, he is but a marionette dancing on their strings. A tragedy indeed. The emperor's body isn't even cold, and his trusted aides are already circling like vultures. But Tu Ye wants no part of this bloody drama, not to mention he has a stunning assassin watching his every move. What to do, he ponders. His eyes lock onto the jade seal in Xiao's hand. In a flash, he snatches it. This old fool won't control me, Tu Ye thinks. The minister roars in outrage. What madness is this? Tu Ye calculates rapidly. If I die, the dynasty falls into chaos. Mission accomplished. He slaps his hand onto Xiao's face, gripping him with insane confidence. I hold the seal now. I decide who breathes. Xiao Su freezes in disbelief. She never imagined this puppet had the guts to humiliate her father. Is he courting death? She trembles. Was his foolishness merely a mask for a sleeping dragon? Now that the Imperial Seal is in his grasp, the atmosphere shifts violently. But Minister Xiao's eyes darken. You arrogant brat, Xiao warns. I made you and I can break you, Tu Ye grins. Then do it. Kill me right now. With murderous intent flaring in his eyes, the man lunged forward, vowing to strangle the emperor with his bare hands. His daughter desperately held him back, begging for mercy, until Chen Yuan stepped in to command order amidst the chaos. However, our protagonist Tu Ye noticed something unsettling. Their anger was fading too quickly. To die, he needed to ignite a war. Suddenly, a crisp, shattering sound echoed through the hall. The precious jade seal lay in fragments on the cold floor. Feigning innocence, he apologized for his butterfingers, knowing full well that this seal represented the mandate of heaven itself. This was the supreme authority of the Chen Dynasty. Destroying it was not just clumsy, it was high treason, punishable by instant death. He waited for the inevitable execution order, sensing that his ticket back to the modern world was finally within reach. Yet Chen Yuan remained terrifyingly still, suppressing a rage that could burn down cities, forcing himself to do absolutely nothing. Zao tried to strike, but Chen Yuan caught his arm, his voice dripping with forced calm. His Majesty is merely testing us. The entire world belongs to the Emperor, he reasoned. Why should we shed blood over a broken piece of pretty stone? Declaring that the hour was late, they turned to leave, refusing to take the bait. But Tuyi wasn't done playing with fire. Even the Emperor, he shouted, must pay with his life if he breaks the law. He was begging for the axe, but they simply walked away. The scene shifts to the conspirators' lair. Zao demanded they find a way to dispose of the brat immediately. Do you have a death wish? Chen Yuan countered, his eyes narrowing. Have you forgotten the shark swimming outside the palace walls? He warned his foolish ally that General Tu Su's army was stationed just outside. One wrong move and heads would roll. If Tuyi died mysteriously tonight, an investigation would launch, and they would be the first to meet the executioner's blade. By shattering the seal, the boy had destroyed their leverage. Now, their only safety net was ensuring his smooth ascension. Confused, Zao asked if he truly believed the boy broke the sacred artifact on purpose, just to checkmate them. I am certain of it, Chen Yuan replied. He realized that with the throne secured, he needed to neutralize our threat. If they pushed him too far, Tuyi would simply ally with his brother, General Tu Su, and crush the ministers like ants. It would be a slaughter. Their grand ambitions would crumble, and their lives would be forfeit in a single night. The boy was orchestrating a perfect stalemate, balancing the powers to ensure his own survival. Zao scoffed, laughing at the idea. He refused to believe that a dim-witted child could possess such strategic brilliance. But Chen Yuan reminded him of the boy's parting words, the emperor and commoners are equal before the law. That was not a random outburst. It was the famous quote of Minister Wang, a legend from 100 years ago. Wang had risen to the heavens only to be dismembered when he lost the emperor's favor. The boy was sending a message. It was a threat disguised as madness. Zao, however, spat on the ground, refusing to bow to a puppet emperor. Even without the authority of the Jade Seal, Zao vowed to send assassins to eliminate the military threat of Tu Su. Chen Yuan remained silent, realizing they had gravely underestimated their puppet. They chose him because he looked weak. A chill ran down his spine as he laughed frantically. The late emperor, he whispered, truly left behind a monster. Meanwhile, back in the dragon's lair, our protagonist lay in bed, utterly defeated by the crushing weight of boredom. This world was a prison. The food was flavorless trash, the music was torture, and the entertainment was non-existent. No internet, no smartphone, no anime. He was going to die of boredom long before any assassin could reach him. Just as he contemplated his misery, he sensed a presence. He turned to find a vision of beauty standing there. It was Xiao Su. Blushing deeply, she whispered that her duty required her to watch over his slumber. His brain short-circuited. Face flushing red, he instantly decided that this primitive world might have some perks after all. Time seemed to blur. Our hero, who usually spent his days gaming, was now finding new reasons to appreciate his royal captivity. But he hadn't forgotten his mission. Stretching his limbs, his sharp eyes caught the glint of metal in her hair. A sharp hairpin, deadly and precise. A perfect tool to end his life and send his soul back to the modern era. He poured a drink, his voice dropping an octave. Xiao Su, he asked, did your father send you to spy on me? The color drained from her face. Her disguise had been pierced instantly. She stammered, denying everything. I don't understand, Your Majesty, she cried, but her trembling hands betrayed her terrified heart. He took a slow sip of wine, his demeanor shifting from goofy boy to cold monarch. It doesn't matter, he said. Turning his back to her, he smirked. I know exactly why you are here, and I know exactly who pulls your strings. In fact, he whispered, the thrill of danger dancing in his eyes. I think I'm going to enjoy this little game. If he was showing his hand this early, it meant he had grown bored of this charade. He took another slow sip of the crimson wine. Ah, truly, a poison for the soul. With a heavy thud, he slumped onto the table, feigning unconsciousness. For the assassin, time seemed to freeze. This was it. The golden opportunity she had prayed for. Shu's trembling hand reached for her sharp hairpin. With her cover blown, she was a discarded pawn. Useless to the emperor and worthless to her adoptive father. Redemption demanded blood. She had to strike now. She crept closer, heart pounding like a war drum. He hummed a carefree melody, waiting for the bite. But suddenly, the system chimed with a new objective. The target. Total destruction. The score was calculated based on the empire's military might, culture, and stability. The goal was simple yet insane. Drive the Great Chan nation's value below zero. Only then would the mission be complete. He started with a massive 1,000 points. A cold realization struck him like lightning. If he died right now, the mission would fail. He couldn't log out yet, but the blade was already whistling through the air, aiming for his jugular. He couldn't die a pointless death here. The girl knew this was a trap, a test of her resolve. But hesitation meant death. She grit her teeth and lunged, betting everything on this strike. In a split second, he spun around his hand, clamping onto her wrist like a steel vice. A single tear betrayed her fear. He had played her like a fiddle again. That was a little too close for comfort, he smirked. Desperate, she ripped the hairpin free and scrambled back. "I can still kill you," she screamed. But fate was cruel. She tripped over her own feet, crashing onto the floor in a pathetic heap. Tears of absolute frustration streamed down her face. He looked down at her unimpressed. "You intend to kill a king with a combat power of only 44? He snatched the weapon from her trembling hand. "You get too excited over mere words." He tilted her chin up, forcing her to look into his eyes. "This is not the conduct of a qualified shadow." The poor girl sobbed, her spirit shattered. The assassination had failed. Darkness took her, until she jolted awake in a strange room. "Where am I?" Footsteps echoed in the void. A voice cold as the grave asked, "Is the mission complete?" She spun around to see her adoptive father towering over her. He extended a hand, not to help, but to judge. "If you cannot handle a simple task, you must be disciplined." A scream tore from her throat. She gasped, waking up in the real world beside Tui. Was it a nightmare? She trembled. "Are you going to kill me now?" He rose from the bed, his presence overwhelming. "I told you, didn't I? I won't kill you. We will continue this little game. You will be my messenger bird." That makes the plot much more entertaining. Moments later, she was grinding ink, preparing an imperial decree. She watched him terrified. What scheme was hiding behind that demonic expression? He must be planning to annihilate her father's clan. But the truth was far stupider. He was just struggling to write with the ancient brush. "This cursed thing is impossible." He sighed, defeated by stationery. "That was fast," she whispered, confused by his mood swing. He turned to her, swallowing his pride. "Help me write this." Before she could object, his hand was on her shoulder, pushing her down. "Sit. Write." The air was thick with awkward tension. I don't know what His Majesty wishes to decree." He smiled, a chaotic glint in his eye. "Write this. Strip the two family of their surnames. Make them commoners." The brush froze in her hand. She blinked, doubting her own ears. "Banishing. Your own bloodline. Why would a servant be forced to write such madness? Why would he destroy his own power base?" But Tui had a method to his madness. He had asked the system for the fastest speedrun to 0 points. The answer: annihilate the two families' influence. Since his uncle held the military power, this move would cripple the nation's defense. It would paint him as a ruthless, insane tyrant. Perfection. Yes. Let the world see me as a monster. Let them all come for my head. He noticed her freezing up. "Why do you hesitate?" "Apologies, Your Majesty." She hurriedly began to write. He leaned in, whispering the secret into her ear like a devil on her shoulder. "I am doing this to raise the difficulty level, to make the game thrilling." His hand grazed her face, sending shivers down her spine. "With this decree, I am truly alone, a solitary tyrant with no allies. And you," he smiled darky, "you shall deliver this bomb to Zhou Xiao. Consider this intel a gift." Poor Shu. She had known only pain her entire life, and this was the first gift she had ever received. Even though she knew she was being used, a twisted sense of gratitude bloomed in her chest. The scene shifted to the Dragon's Den, the residence of Zhu. She knocked on the heavy doors. The traitor opened it, his eyes narrowing. "What is it?" "I have vital intelligence regarding the Emperor." She stepped inside the atmosphere heavy with conspiracy. "Tui has signed a decree. He is stripping all royal status from the Tu family." The two ministers froze their faces pale. "What?" Zhu turned to his co-conspirator Chuan. Panic began to set in. "We plan to replace the puppet with another Tu descendant. This move destroys our entire strategy." Chaos erupted in the room. Chuan slammed his hand down. "How did you get this information?" Shu looked down, cheeks flushing. "His Majesty had me write the decree myself." A sharp slap echoed through the hall. "You bastard!" Zhu struck her down without mercy. She crumpled to the floor like trash. "Did you leak our secrets?" he roared. Tears flooded her eyes again. "No, I would never." But he pointed a trembling finger at her. "You used that boy to destroy your own father." Rage blinded him. But Chuan grabbed his shoulder, the voice of reason. "Calm down. Think Zhu. If she had leaked our plans, she wouldn't even know about the decree." The realization hit Zhu. He paused, the anger slowly draining away. A father may stumble, yet he commands respect. He turns to Tianuan. Our scheme to crown a puppet has crumbled to dust. Now they initiate the backup plan. Summon the court. We shall gather every official and crush that bastard's spirit in public. Chuan begins to speak, but silence claims his tongue. Why cast pearls before swine? It is better to bury the thought. Xiaoju lacks the wit for high treason. It is wiser to weave the spider's web alone right under our dear emperor's nose. Meanwhile, Tui digs for gold, literally completely unbothered. The decree is ready, but it is weak. This will not drop the countries. Score to absolute zero. He needs a catastrophe. His mind drifts to the annals of history, where a mighty empire once collapsed into ash. Corrupt officials were mere symptoms. The true poison. A tyrant who forcibly seized women from the entire population. He recruited concubines like a glutton devouring a feast. And who holds the true power in this viper's nest? The courtiers. If he plunders their wives and daughters, their fury will ignite a rebellion. He will steal them all. A wicked grin spreads across his face. Points will plummet and he reaps the rewards. It is the ultimate gambit. He commands his attendant. Bring me Xiaoju and Le Chuan. Immediately, moments later, the doors creak open. Tui spreads his arms wide. My beloved subjects, how I have yearned for you. Chuan bows with calculated grace, but Xiaoju insolently takes a seat. You must learn to handle the wolves of the court, your majesty. The rotund man trembles with glee. If the court turns on Tui, it is over. Against the entire nobility, the boy is helpless. Yet Tui's mind races. A formal assembly seems wise, which is exactly why he must refuse it. Ah, that sounds utterly exhausting, he yawns, feigning laziness. I have only just ascended the dragon throne. How could I possibly manage? I shall leave it entirely to my two trustworthy pillars. Chuan's eyes narrow, sensing a trap. The boy is terrifyingly sharp. By refusing, he shatters Xiaoju's ambush before it begins. And by invoking trust, he binds their hands with their own loyalty. Xiaoju's petty schemes are nothing but dust before this mountain. Tui smiles predatory and wild. It is time to execute the tyrant's harem protocol. Forget the boring politics, he declares. A matter of grave importance demands attention. It is a stain on his honor to possess only one consort as emperor. I shall sweep the lands. Countless beauties shall fill my inner palace. Even the treacherous Xiaoju is stunned. The previous emperor's grave is fresh, yet the son seeks pleasure, cold-blooded. But Chuan's mind whirls desperately, decoding the strategy. What is the boy calculating behind that mask of lust? Tui leans back, radiating false gravity. This must be resolved swiftly. Witnessing their shock, Tui knows the system points are about to freefall. Chaos is the ladder he intends to climb. Xiaoju protests. Sire, scouring the world takes months. Tui waves a dismissive hand. Then we begin today. But we shall hunt only within the Imperial City. The chubby minister blinks, baffled by such reckless haste. A chill runs down Tianan's spine. The capital. The target is specific. Suddenly, Tui strokes his chin, as if struck by divine inspiration. I have found the most efficient path, he purrs. We shall requisition the daughters and wives of the court officials. Immediately, thunderstruck Chuan freezes. The scene shifts to the palace grounds. Xiaoju laughs. The boy is a fool consumed by lust, ignoring the state for skirts. It is a gift from the heavens. The brat is digging his own tomb, and we need not lift a finger. Silence. Tianan's roar echoes against the walls. Continue to underestimate the dragon and our heads will roll. Xiaoju recoils in fear as Tianan regains his icy composure. Forgive my outburst, he hisses, but you are blind. This harem is a blade held against our throats. First he dodged the court assembly, proving he foresaw your trap. Xiaoju argues, we planned that only moments ago. He could not know. Chuan shakes his head. That only proves his terrifying foresight. Rejecting the court and building the harem are not whims. They are moves in a grandmaster's game. It is a cohesive strategy born of genius, Xiaoju stammers. Cohesive, what do you mean? Chuan's eyes gleam with fear and admiration. He does not need to meet the court because he intends to hold it hostage. By seizing the ministers' families, he forces marriage alliances. He gains absolute leverage over every house in the capital. We lose our pawns. We lose our power. Xiaoju trembles. Then, what is our move? A dark resolve settles over Chuan. We submit. We must aid His Majesty in spreading the imperial bloodline. He spreads his arms, embracing the chaos. As loyal dogs, we must serve him the very rope he wishes to hang us with. Days pass. The imperial hall is thick with tension. Chuan reports, Your Majesty, your kin, have been stripped of titles. Save for the exiled brother, they are commoners now. Tui flicks his wrist. Trifles, such boring matters can wait. Tell me of the harvest. How goes the selection? Chuan bows low. The ministers strained every sinew to obey, but time was short. Tui claps his hands, a sound like a gavel strike. Show me. The heavy curtains parted, unveiling a legion of breathtaking beauties. For the young emperor, this wasn't just a selection. It was paradise on earth. As the women bowed in reverence to his majesty, Tui leaned in, whispering a wicked question to Minister Chen Yuan. Tell me, Minister, he murmured. Are any of these delicate flowers skilled in close quarters combat behind closed doors? The minister froze confusion, clouding his eyes. Even if the words were vague, the intent felt dangerous. Was the prince catching on to the trap? Cold sweat began to form on Chen Yuan's brow. Did the tyrant suspect that among these noble daughters lay hidden blades? Of all the women present, two stood apart. The one in crimson was Fantu, and the one in violet was Yusa. 10 years ago, the former emperor slaughtered their clans, washing the capital in blood and leaving them as orphans of a fallen dynasty. On a whim, Chen Yuan had spared them from the executioner's blade. For a decade, he raised them in the shadows, honing them into lethal weapons. They inherited the ancient bloodline talents of their ancestors, making them the perfect pawns to strike at the heart of the throne. In the darkness of the planning room, Chen Yuan had revealed their target. The tyrant who orphaned you is dead, but his bloodline remains on the throne. Since they could not claim the father's head, he asked if their thirst for vengeance still burned bright enough to kill the son. Their eyes blazed with hatred. We would die 1,000 deaths, they vowed, if it means seeing the empire burn. For the minister, this was the ultimate gamble, placing 2 assassins right beside the prince without raising a single flag of suspicion. Tui's gaze lingered on them, a sparkle in his eye. Strange, he thought, analyzing their contrasting figures. Quite an unbalanced pair, aren't they? Chen Yuan held his breath, terrified. Had the boy already noticed their killing intent? But the system window floating before Tui revealed everything. It showed that Yusa was an adopted daughter of the traitorous minister, destined to kill the emperor and shatter the nation. Fantu had different stats, but her goal was identical. Tui grinned internally. A snake and a scorpion sent to a tyrant who wants to ruin the country. It was a match made in heaven. He stepped closer, his smile masking his thoughts. You are exceptional, he purred, asking for their names. As Fantu introduced herself, Tui closed the distance to Yusa. You seem trembling, my dear, he noted. The minister felt his heart stop. Yusa was drenched in cold sweat. She feared her introverted nature was leaking her murderous intent. But Tui gently tilted her chin up. Fear not, he whispered, his voice dripping with false charm. I am a very approachable man. He continued his teasing until, I can't take it, she gasped. And just like that, she collapsed to the floor out cold. The system belatedly pinged a notification. Yusa had a zero-tolerance policy for physical contact. She had literally fainted from embarrassment. Tui stood frozen, his hands still in the air. He just wanted to act the part of a lecherous king. He didn't expect her to short-circuit. The minister looked ready to faint himself. This clumsy display could ruin a decade of planning. Terrified that his assassination plot was exposed, Chen Yuan fell to his knees, slamming his head against the floor. This servant deserves death for this mistake. I will remove this failure from your sight at once, he cried. But Tui simply raised a hand. That won't be necessary. He scooped the unconscious girl into his arms with a devilish smirk. I quite like a woman who breaks so easily under my touch. Fantu watched in silence, her fist clenching. Disgusting pervert, she thought. Chen Yuan wiped the sweat from his face, praising the emperor's mercy. She will serve me in bed tonight, Tui declared casually. Fantu vowed that he would pay for this humiliation in blood. Suddenly, the tyrant's eyes locked onto Fantu. Why do you look so pleased, he asked, though she looked nothing of the sort. Perhaps you are eager to join us. He grinned. Decided then. Tonight the 3 of us will share the royal chambers. Without a moment to process, the scene shifted to the bedroom. Tui looked at his 2 prizes satisfied. Amongst all the palace beauties, these 2 were true calamities. The system warned they were getting closer to destroy the kingdom. Perfect, Tui thought. They had strong stats and were trained by the traitorous minister. They were exactly what he needed. The only problem was the system hid their specific combat skills. He knew their history, but not how they planned to bring down the dynasty. Fantu glanced back at the door, trapping them with the beast. What is this tyrant planning, she wondered, her heart pounding. The 2 girls exchanged a glance of steel resolve. They prepared themselves for martyrdom. Whatever humiliation awaited, they would endure it for the cause. Back in the heavy silence of the room, Tui suddenly spoke. The time has come. But then he just stood there, staring. The silence stretched, amplifying Fantu's anxiety to a breaking point. Why did he request both of them? Was it a trap? They remembered the minister's warning. Their identities were hidden perfectly. But Tui was a wild card. A paranoid tyrant not easily swayed by beauty alone. And with the minister playing both sides, they had to tread carefully. To kill the beast, they first had to enter his belly. They needed to prove they were worth more than just their pretty faces. Tui stepped into the light, his shadow looming over them. "I will ask you only once," he said, his voice piercing through their disguise. "Do you possess any special talents?" The moment of destiny had arrived. Just as Tian had instructed, Xia stepped forward to display her worth. She claimed mastery over the secrets of the heavens, deciphering the stars and wielding powerful talismans. Her expertise extended to the divine arts of medicine and alchemy, leaving Tu genuinely impressed by her potential. She even hinted at mastery in the bedchamber arts, though Tu found the irony thick, considering she had fainted from a mere touch earlier. Tu then turned his gaze to Fan Tu, demanding to know what skills she brought to the table. Fan Tu sensed his dissatisfaction immediately. In truth, she was the scion of a powerful merchant clan. Since she was a child, she had stood by her grandfather's side, navigating the cutthroat world of negotiations. She was a prodigy of finance and a master of reading the human heart. However, her grandfather had left her with a grave warning. Such brilliance invites the jealousy of the powerful. To exact her revenge, she needed to hide her claws and play the fool. And so she looked Tu in the eye and lied, claiming to be a frail woman with absolutely no cultivation or special talents. Hiding her sharp mind and merchant's instinct, she adopted the persona of an innocent, naive young lady. She spun a tale of a wealthy lineage and dead parents claiming her only burden was the massive fortune they left behind. Tu stared at her, wondering if she was the Bruce Wayne of this world, rich, orphaned, and traumatized. But as he analyzed the board, a devilish idea formed. This was the perfect pawn to help him destroy the kingdom. As a tyrant seeking ruin, why should he care about competence? He declared that he would burden her with his wealth. He shocked her to the core by immediately appointing her as the minister of the national treasury. Tu's logic was flawless. A spoiled, incompetent rich girl would surely bankrupt the nation in no time at all. It was the perfect recipe for economic collapse. He then turned to Xia, appointing her as the grand national teacher. Her duty: to brew elixirs for his longevity. Xia stood frozen, unable to comprehend the madness of this offer. Tu was confident that her questionable medical skills would result in mass poisoning, accelerating the kingdom's doom. Furthermore, he demanded she wear the traditional Taoist robes simply because he had a weakness for the aesthetic. Xia was terrified by his intensity, while Tu tried to hide the nosebleed caused by his own wild imagination. The scoundrel was already dreaming of building a cosplay harem right in the middle of this bloody martial world. The scene shifts to the shadowed halls of the Imperial Study, where the usurper was drafting a fake decree. He had forged a replica of the Jade Seal, his brushstrokes dripping with a plot to assassinate Prince Tusu. Once his brother was eliminated, the throne would be secure. He barked a command and General Zelen stepped from the shadows. The rotund emperor handed over the death warrant, ordering the general to ride for Lintong City immediately. His orders were absolute force Tusu to commit suicide and bring back his severed head as proof. But the walls have ears. On the rooftops, a spy released a carrier eagle, its silhouette cutting across the full moon. Deep in the forest, an army marched unaware that death watched them from the canopy above. A girl in a butterfly mask signaled the ambush, but in a moment of clumsy misfortune, she slipped. She plummeted from the branch with a scream, crashing into the undergrowth with zero grace. Her subordinates sighed, accustomed to their leader's lack of coordination, as she awkwardly ordered the attack from the dirt. General Zelen, riding ahead, spotted the tripwire too late. He tried to rein in his steed, but gravity took hold. Chaos erupted, soldiers fell, and before they could rise, assassins descended like a storm of blades. Zelen roared in fury, demanding to know which rebels dared to intercept an Imperial envoy. A shadowed figure stood motionless before lunging with the speed of a viper, cutting down 2 guards in a single breath. Zelen scoffed at the display, but a voice mocked him from above. In an instant, cold steel pressed against his throat. The butterfly assassin revealed their identity as the Shadow Guardians. Without mercy, she ended the general's life. A soldier retrieved the lockbox, confirming that the forged Imperial decree was indeed in Zelen's possession. It was a command for the Crown Prince to take his own life, a vile scheme orchestrated by the tyrant on the throne. One of the younger guards hesitated, trembling at the thought of defying an imperial order, but the leader reminded him of their true purpose. They were the hidden blade of the late emperor, sworn to protect his will. Though their methods were bloody and ruthless, their loyalty to the true bloodline was absolute and potential. The late emperor had chosen Tusu as his successor, but the current ruler had not only stolen the throne, but now sought fratricide. With cold fury, she obliterated the imperial decree. To her, this shattered scroll was absolute proof the new emperor was an enemy, the Kung Guard, must purge from existence. She commanded a total lockdown of the area, ensuring not a single whisper leaked out. Tu Yi was currently stationed in the distant north. Even with the swiftest steed, the journey would take 4 grueling days. In that blind spot, Tu Yi would remain oblivious to whether the decree had succeeded or failed. Xiao vowed to silence him before the truth came to light. Meanwhile, Tu Yi suddenly sneezed, breaking his composure. He grinned, wondering which beauty was pining for him so intensely. 5 days later, back at the estate, the silence was deafening. Still no word. The messenger had clearly been intercepted. Chen Yuan approached the pacing official, asking what he expected to find. Tu Yi was not the one waiting. Fate was. Chen Yuan raised a single finger, his expression unreadable. He brought tidings of both fortune and disaster. Xiao Su snapped, demanding to know what could possibly be worse than their current predicament. Chen Yuan's voice was ice cold. The plan to forge the decree and eliminate Tu Su had crumbled to dust. Xiao Su froze in shock. He seized Chen Yuan's collar, accusing him of madness, but Chen Yuan swatted his hand away with effortless disdain. They were allies, so he needed to drop the act. The messenger Jin had been intercepted outside the city walls 5 days prior, and his executioner was none other than the legendary leader of the Kung Guards, Xiao. The official stood bewildered. Why would the late emperor's shadow unit interfere now? Chen Yuan smirked, telling him to wait for the silver lining. Xiao now believed Tu Yi authorized the decree, marking him as her primary target. Xiao Su cheered, but his joy was short-lived. How could they know the movements of the secretive Kung Guard? Chen Yuan simply replied that he had eyes everywhere. Xiao Su didn't need the details. He just needed to know that fortune favored them. This was the golden opportunity to restore the balance of power, especially since His Majesty was hosting a grand banquet tonight attended by the entire court. If Xiao intended to strike tonight was the only choice. As a silhouette leaped beneath the pale moonlight, they noted the guard was significantly weakened. Even if the blade missed its mark, Tu Yi would blame his brother shattering the fragile piece forever. Xiao Su laughed. Tu Yi would die, and Tu Su would bear the guilt. A flawless victory. It was the perfect scheme now left to the hands of fate. Xiao Su couldn't imagine failure, but Chen Yuan was already turning to leave. He had delivered the script. The actors would do the rest. As he descended the stairs, a thought nagged him. The only variable he couldn't calculate was His Majesty's chaotic nature. Furthermore, the 2 spies he planted despised the emperor. Tonight offered them a chance for vengeance. But no matter their skill, could they truly outwit the unpredictable Majesty? He hoped it was just paranoia. Meanwhile, in the Grand Palace Hall, Tu Yi's legendary cosplay banquet had officially begun. Standing center stage competitors dressed as Nezuko and Saber, or poor imitations of them, posed for the crowd. The ladies exchanged thinly veiled compliments, their eyes locked on the prize. They were all competing for Tu Yi's favor. Some regretted not being bolder with their costumes. Suddenly, a cold presence filled the hall. Lady Xiao, leader of the Kung Guards, had arrived. She scanned the room, confirming her suspicions this ruler was a shameless deviant with bizarre fetishes. Confused, she noted that none of these women possessed martial aura. Yet the air crackled with a different kind of killing intent. The jealousy of the harem. She overheard whispers. The concubines believed her revealing assassin attire was a sign of overwhelming ambition. A woman in green praised Xiao's outfit as creative, though her eyes betrayed her. In this viper's nest status was everything. Xiao fought the urge to slaughter them all right there. She had to focus. Her true prey was elsewhere. Suddenly the hall erupted in cheers. His Majesty Tu Yi made his grand entrance. The costumed girls were merely distractions. Tu Yi blew a kiss to the crowd, shamelessly declaring his love for every woman present. They squealed in delight, but Tu Yi's expression shifted. He spotted an anomaly. The system instantly flagged her identity. It was Xiao, leader of the Kung Guards, and a loyalist to his brother Xiao instantly felt his gaze pierce through her disguise. Had she been compromised, her hand drifted to her hidden kunai. It was time to end this perverted tyrant's reign. She roared at His Majesty, launching herself into the air. "Face your death," the harem gasped, shocked by her boldness. How dared she speak to the emperor like that? Or was this the ultimate level of roleplay he desired? 5 days. Earlier, Tu Yi had briefed the harem on the competition rules. Naturally, confusion reigned among the traditional beauties. When asked to define a cosplay banquet, he casually explained where costumes play roles and entertain him. It was all a game. Suddenly, it made sense to them. The sisters believed Xiao was merely method acting as an assassin to win his favor. As Xiao charged with lethal intent, screaming for his death, Tu Yi simply winked and blew her a heart-shaped kiss. A concubine grumbled in envy. That wretched woman was playing the dangerous assassin card perfectly, knowing full well that danger excited him. Mengsha's eyes darted sideways, spotting Uda leaping through the air with reckless abandon. She grabbed the girl's arm mid-flight and slammed her into the earth with a bone-rattling thud. Mengsha was baffled. Were these women insane? They had zero cultivation, yet they dared to challenge a master. Perhaps this madness was the true nature of their absurd roleplay. Suddenly, a sea of concubines surged forward. They screamed that they would protect His Majesty from this lunatic, pulling her away with desperate strength. Mengsha couldn't comprehend their fierce loyalty to such a man, but her grip tightened on her dagger. If they chose to stand in her way, she would show no mercy. Tui's heart nearly stopped, not from fear, but panic. These women were precious resource points for his tyrant system. He roared a command for Meng Sha to halt. Meng Sha muttered under her breath. This perverted ruler certainly had the audacity of a king. The women declared with burning eyes that they would gladly die for him, but Tui knew that was impossible. The nation still had too many health points remaining. He stepped forward, his aura shifting. He vowed to abdicate the throne to Tu Su right then and there. He knew her true mission was assassination. Meng Sha froze. Did he know her identity? Was this entire scenario a trap laid by a mastermind? Tui threw his arms wide, admitting the truth. He was tired of the masquerade. The throne meant nothing to him compared to a harem of beauties. He would gladly gift the empire to someone capable. Ding, the system exploded with a red alert. A hidden story route had been triggered, the destruction of the nation. The conditions were set. An enemy army at the gates and the abdication of the throne to a general. If this plan succeeded, he would lose 1,000 points instantly, dropping his score to absolute 0. Meng Sha narrowed her eyes. No mortal could resist such absolute power. He had to be lying. Coldly, she declared his words meaningless. She would kill him regardless and deliver the crown to Tu Su herself. Tui scrambled to escalate his persuasion tactics. If he died here, Tu Su's reign would be stained with blood. He claimed his actions were born of brotherly love. His words triggered a sudden memory within Meng Sha, a flashback to the late emperor. He had once asked her a question that weighed heavy on her soul. She had told him that his military genius would make him a legend for generations to come. But the late emperor had sighed, claiming his talents were only for war, not for the peace the future needed. Meng Sha had argued fervently, but the old ruler turned away, sensing his time was short. He didn't desire a talented successor. He wanted someone tolerant, someone who valued peace over greed. Even a lazy or careless ruler would suffice, as long as they did not seek endless conquest. Meng Sha had always believed Prince Tu Su was the chosen one, but the late emperor's words haunted her now. Tui, this lazy, incompetent fool, actually fit the description perfectly. She shook her head violently. She refused to be swayed. Tu Su was the legitimate heir. She vowed to drag Tui to Lintong City. The abdication ceremony would happen on her terms. The system warned that the story was advancing perfectly, but suddenly, a terrifying pressure blocked their path. It was Judge Sha holding a glowing talisman. She demanded to know what right Meng Sha had to touch the emperor. A purple aura exploded around her. Meng Sha gasped. Tui's helplessness might have been a ploy all along. She gripped her dagger, cursing the tyrant. He played with people's hearts like a demon. Yet Tui stood there, utterly dumbfounded by this development. What kind of chaotic plot twist had he stumbled into? Now Tsu stepped up, her confidence overflowing. She assured Tui that Jude Shah's talisman arts were peerless. They wouldn't lose to a mere assassin. Tui scratched his head. When did he ever ask these girls to become his bodyguards? Flashback to a few nights prior, Advisor Chuan was debriefing the two undercover girls in the shadows. He asked if they understood the true gravity of their mission. Meng Sha had planned to execute the tyrant, but Chuan revealed the darker truth. Killing him once was far too merciful for their vengeance. Their goal was total annihilation. They needed to bring about the complete collapse of the dynasty. To do that, they had to ensure Tui remained alive. The girls were confused by this paradox. Chuan explained with a sinister smirk. Tui's incompetence was the key. He was the weapon that would ruin everything. The story begins with a question of fate. Is she destined to be a mere concubine, manipulating the emperor to destroy the Cayenne dynasty? Chen Yuan confirms her darkest fears. That is the mission. But he warns that the initial plan has changed. Since taking the throne, Emperor Tui has transformed. His legendary incompetence, a masterful disguise. He has become a dragon hidden in the mist, impossible to predict. They must stay close and find his fatal flaw. She had never seen Lord Chen Yuan this grave. Was it fear trembling in his voice, or the thrill of the game? Chen Yuan turned to Feng, praising her sharp intellect. He trusted she would adapt to this dangerous new board. One is a master of talismans and alchemy. The other, a warrior with a simple mind but fists of steel. Their combined strengths make them the perfect weapon. Tui must never be allowed to stand beside Prince Tu Su. Back in the present, Feng chuckles darkly. Chen Yuan was right. The emperor's foolishness was a calculated facade. She was a warrior of the Kungar, and this bizarre costume gala was the trap to lure her in. Once she got close, he crafted the perfect stage to drag her to Tu Su, plotting revenge against the ministers. But what Tui didn't know was that Chen Yuan had foreseen this move and planted these two flowers to choke him. Tui narrowed his eyes in frustration. Tsu giggled, but suddenly the emperor noticed a disturbance. Tsu started whistling at the sky, feigning innocence. But Tui saw through the charade instantly. These girls were Chen Yuan's pawns. They would never let him abdicate the throne to Tu Su. The problem was, this chaos was his golden ticket to ruin the empire. He had to control Xiao. His expression shifted as he recalled Xiao's greatest weakness. As she stepped back to compose herself, Tuai moved like a phantom sneaking behind her. He grabbed her waist, lifting her chin with arrogant dominance. He declared that a supreme ruler like him needed no protection from his concubines. Xiao's face turned crimson. She tried to speak, but her spirit broke before her body did. She collapsed. The tyrant smirked, turning to the other spy. "Seize your opportunity. The path is clear." Xiao paused, confusion clouding her eyes. Surely there were more traps hidden up this tyrant's sleeve. Tui urged her to move, demanding action. With little choice, Xiao decided to capture him first. Questions could be answered later. Tui celebrated internally, finally getting what he wanted. But as he approached, Xiao collapsed completely. Unbeknownst to Tui, she possessed a hidden curse. When she loses consciousness from physical contact, a defense mechanism triggers. Any woman who touches the man responsible becomes her mortal enemy. Xiao's eyes snapped open. She glared at the other girls, radiating a terrifying dark aura. She began to approach slowly. Though hesitant, her hands crossed in a complex seal. A third-level fire spell activated. A flame manifested in her palm, expanding into a massive, roaring fireball. Xiao was startled by her own power, and Su watched in paralyzed shock. Tui panicked. If Xiao died here, his entire plan for kingdom destruction would crumble. He rushed forward, shoving Xiao aside, screaming for her to dodge the blast. At that precise moment, Xiao unleashed her attack. A massive explosion rocked the palace foundations. And, in the chaos, somehow their lips met. Wait, is this a romance anime from 2003? Xiao turned as red as a tomato, ready to scream, but her head slammed into the floor. She fainted again. Smoke rose from the debris, leaving them both sprawled on the ground. Tui stood stunned by the absurdity. Suddenly, the system's blue screen flashed before him. Current event failed. However, a new scenario, Circle of the Pillar, had been triggered. The conditions. An assassin attempts regicide in the main hall, while a healer protects the king. Tui realized the stakes. If he defeated the assassin now, he would gain 1,000 national power points. The emperor was devastated. What kind of nonsense is this? Why is the system boosting him? Why call it destruction of the country? If I keep gaining points, he lamented internally. Nearby, Tsu watched everything trembling at his overwhelming aura. Despite both experts fainting, the emperor stood untouched. She finally understood why Chen Yuan feared him. He assured her that such treacherous thoughts were beneath him, then ordered the guards to watch over her sister. With a wave of his hand, he dismissed the rest. As silence descended upon the hall, his mind raced. The assassination mission had failed, but perhaps keeping this deadly flower alive was the superior move. She could be the spark that ignited the war. If she returned to Tusu, she would surely help destroy the nation. But Xia hissed, warning him he stood too close to death. She threatened him with torture and demise, pushing him back with trembling hands. "Do not test my patience," she spat, her eyes burning with defiance. She confessed to slaughtering the messenger, meant for Tusu, daring him to strike her down right there. She added that the prince would soon arrive to claim his head. The emperor, feigning ignorance, asked when he had ever ordered his brother's death. Xia scoffed, telling him to drop the act she knew of the secret decree. But the emperor saw the truth in Shu's eyes. This wasn't his doing. It was the prime minister's dirty work. The pieces of the puzzle clicked into place. Shu's terrified expression confirmed it all. Her father was behind the scheme. For the emperor, however, this misunderstanding was a gift from the heavens. It was the perfect opportunity to fuel the flames of hatred against himself. Xia watched in confusion as he suddenly clutched his head. A maniacal laugh erupted from his throat, echoing like a villain's anthem. He played the part perfectly, claiming he had just remembered signing the death warrant. Why would he admit to such evil? Ignoring her confusion, he strode to the wall and seized a ceremonial sword. He declared that his brother controlled a mighty army. "Such power should belong only to me," he bellowed. Xia could not understand why His Majesty was so eager to paint himself as a tyrant. Tui explained with a twisted grin that simply sending a decree was far too boring. He intended to deal with his brother in a much more entertaining fashion. Xia braced for death as the blade whistled through the air, but steel did not meet flesh. With a resounding clang, he severed her chains. Xia stared, bewildered. "Why spare her?" he replied coldly, that since she had killed his messenger, she was now obligated to deliver his new decree personally. He monologued that their father had trained Tusu to be a hero, a beacon of hope. "But to me," he sneered, "he is nothing but a brute with a sword." With arrogant flair, Tu announced his ultimatum. He would strip his brother of all titles, all positions, and cast him down. He would reduce the revered prince to a mere commoner. Xia looked so stunned, her eyes practically drifted 3 meters apart in disbelief. He commanded her to deliver this insult to her master. And if the prince dared to disagree with the emperor's divine will, tell him to come and reclaim what is his. Tui challenged, his voice dripping with malice. I will be waiting for him in the capital. Ecstatic with his villainous performance, Tui was certain Xia would now loathe him. But suddenly the system chimed, the rebellion arc had begun. The story routes were opening. For the plot to advance, the capital needed a rival prince with a powerful army. Everything was going according to plan. As the villainous emperor, he had to issue the order to strip the protagonist's powers. The stakes were set. If the prince rebelled during this phase, the host would lose 1,000 points. But if the prince stormed the castle and destroyed everything, the host would lose a massive 10,000 points. Su was thrilled. Losing 10,000 points would surely plunge his score into the negatives. Meanwhile, Xia watched him with wide eyes, thinking the emperor was completely unhinged. Yet perhaps this madness gave Su a real chance at the throne. Tui calmly allowed the woman to flee. Shu watched her go, wondering why His Majesty not only let an assassin escape, but took the blame for her father's crimes. But Tui was no fool. He began to understand the mechanics of this world. He couldn't rely solely on the system's scripted events. Last time he accidentally gained points, a catastrophic failure. He needed to manipulate the ministers like pawns on a chessboard. His gaze shifted to Shu, recalling her father's suggestion for a court meeting. A plan began to form in his mind. Shu trembled under his gaze, unsure of her fate, until he softly called her name. The sudden shift in his demeanor caught her off guard. He apologized for focusing so much on the assassin. She stammered that hearing such gentle words from a tyrant was absolutely terrifying. He stepped closer, his aura overwhelming her. Relax, he whispered. He reminded her that she could tell her father anything she wished. And this time he had a specific message for the Prime Minister. She was to inform him that the Emperor would personally attend the court meeting. He wanted the stage set perfectly. Shu agreed, bowing to his will. And just like that, the dawn of the next day arrived. The Grand Hall was already packed with nobles. The tension was palpable when Minister Shu's arrival was announced. The rotund man waddled in, greeting everyone with practiced cheerfulness, thanking them for compliments that hadn't been given. No need for formalities, he laughed. But he quickly noticed the atmosphere was cold. The excitement he expected was missing. He scanned the room and realized General Tianan's seat was empty. A subordinate whispered that the general was unwell. Unwell Shu thought, his eyes narrowing. That old fox is underestimating me. He knew it was a deliberate slight. He declared loudly that the general should prioritize his health. It was fine. In truth, Shu had already made up his mind. Today, he would first crush the young emperor's authority in court, and then he would deal with the insolent General Tianan. Suddenly, the herald's voice boomed. The emperor had arrived. Shu turned as everyone bowed, but a ripple of shock went through the crowd. Tui entered with head held high, and by his side walked his concubine. Whispers erupted like wildfire. This was a flagrant breach of protocol. Tui stopped, his eyes sweeping over the outraged ministers. If you cannot handle a single concubine, he scoffed, then your incompetence is the real danger. Panic swept through the court like a sudden plague. Officials clutched their heads in sheer disbelief at the incoming spectacle. He had actually dragged the entire inner palace with him. While some maidens fainted from the pressure, others wept for the late emperor's legacy. Is this the great court assembly? The women chirped, tugging at the elders' beards. Tui laughed, claiming his beauties were merely curious. They wanted to experience the royal court firsthand. Surely, no one would dare oppose his whim. Xiao Su narrowed his eyes, wondering if the boy had finally gone mad. Was he insane enough to pull a stunt like this? Another minister trembled in horror, spotting his own family's maiden standing there in disgrace. Your Majesty, he cried out. Did you bring them to this hallowed hall just to humiliate us? Xiao Zuo added that bringing a harem here was a grave breach of protocol. But Tui simply waved his hand, his expression calm. Do not worry, he said smoothly. I have no hidden schemes or grand plans. I am just a foolish leader who wishes to enjoy his harem wherever he goes. Xiao Zuo was struck silent, unsure how to counter such blatant stupidity. Tui smirked internally. He knew that against absolute shamelessness, these old foxes were powerless. He turned to a stunned minister. Well, are you not going to prepare seats for my guests? In moments, small wooden stools were scattered across the majestic floor. The women sat down, giggling that they wanted to be closer to the dragon throne. Tui nodded, promising to arrange better accommodations next time. Suddenly, a notification screen flashed before his eyes. System alert. You are violating the country's customs and etiquette. Result deducting 500 points. Tui was thrilled. Causing absolute chaos in the court was truly the ultimate strategy. His current master plan was simple: destroy all dignity and hemorrhage as many points as possible. Xiao Zuo gritted his teeth, thinking he had to endure this mockery for now. Soon the Prime Minister thought this brat will learn his place. Tui then asked if any of his loyal ministers had reports to file. The tension in the room spiked. Everyone knew the real drama was about to begin. Lord Xiao Zuo was ready to make his move against the puppet emperor. A man named Qiao stepped forward, his eyes gleaming with hidden intent. "Your Majesty, I have news." He claimed interesting omens had appeared on the East Island. He had come specifically to present these signs to the throne. Oh, Tui asked. "What signs?" The chubby official chuckled darkly. "It is none other than the sacred beast, the Azure Dragon." Though honestly, that Azure Dragon looked more swamp green than celestial blue. The elder claimed this symbol represented the rising power of the Chen Dynasty. Tui glanced sideways, looking completely unimpressed. Xiao Zuo watched closely. Why wasn't the boy thrilled by such a favorable omen? Could it be that his grand scheme had already been exposed? He quickly suggested that Tui should personally examine the divine beast. Clapping his hands, Xiao Zuo ordered the creature to be brought in. A massive green claw stomped into the hall. Panic erupted as ministers scrambled to get out of the way. Tui, however, leaned forward with curiosity. Two men entered, struggling to restrain a monstrous creature that looked suspiciously like a giant crocodile. They stopped right in front of Tui. Tui burst into raucous laughter. "You call this the divine Azure Dragon?" It was clearly just a mutated lizard or a dyed beast, Xiao Zuo insisted. "Your Majesty, please admire its majestic nature." Meanwhile, he anxiously waited for the boy's reaction to this spirit beast. At that precise moment, a special system event triggered. The air shivered as the interface appeared. Event condition. A person related to the throne must present a beast as a gift. Time immediate. The beast presented had to be a lie. They had to claim it was one creature when it was obviously something else. This was the legendary calling a deer a horse stratagem. To complete the event and lose a massive 2,000 points, Tui had to be convinced by the ministers that this swamp monster was the real deal. Tui smiled wickedly. Xiao Zuo always brought the most interesting surprises. Now it was time for his Oscar-worthy performance. The massive dragon opened its jaws as Tui stood there observing. The handler struggled to control the beast's thrashing tail. Some ministers couldn't hold back their nervous laughter. Tui commented loudly, "This so-called Azure Dragon doesn't look very real to me." But that hesitation was exactly what Xiao Zuo wanted. It was time to start the manipulation game. Tui then pivoted. "But surely it must be an Azure Dragon." He asked the court, "Do you all agree this is a divine beast?" This was Xiao Zuo's trap all along. Immediately, the corrupt officials began to nod and agree. One even pulled out an ancient book. "My ancestors saw an Azure Dragon, and it looked exactly like this. Identical, truly identical." Everyone congratulated Xiao Zuo, declaring that receiving such a beast was a heavenly blessing. This was Xiao Zuo's strategy: isolate the emperor by forcing everyone to lie. He would strip away Tui's influence one nod at a time. However, for Tui, who desperately wanted to lose those 2,000 points, this betrayal was absolutely perfect. But just as he opened his mouth to praise it, "That thing is disgusting," the voice cut through the room like a knife. Confused, Tui whipped around to see who had spoken. It was one of the girls from his own harem. She wrinkled her nose. A creature so ugly could never be a magnificent Azure Dragon. Tui trembled in fear. Not of the dragon, but of losing his points. Why were these women getting involved at such a critical moment? Desperate to salvage the situation, he called out to Shu. He hoped she had something useful to say, but she looked completely confused. She didn't understand what he expected from her. He stared into her eyes. "Tell me, do you think the creature in this hall is a true Azure Dragon?" Shu hesitated, her heart racing. The emperor had always allowed them freedom, but this question felt heavy with destiny. She had been planted as a spy for Zhao, a pawn in his game. So why in this critical breath of time did the emperor force her to pick a side? Perhaps she realized she was never truly a threat to him. He had offered her mercy, a chance to sever the chains binding her to her adopted father. Memories flooded back, the emperor's constant presence, his closeness to Tsu and Sha. Her resolve hardened like steel. She looked at Zhao. The old fox stood there, arrogant and anxious, certain his puppet daughter would dance on his strings. But then her voice cut through the silence. How could such a grotesque monstrosity be called a sacred beast? Zhao froze, his face draining of color. She didn't stop there. She roared, accusing him of deceiving the Son of Heaven. This was no simple lie. This was high treason, punishable by death. Zhao never expected the dagger to come from his own sleeve. Meanwhile, Tui watched in total confusion. Why hadn't she betrayed him? He mentally rolled his eyes, trying to decode why she suddenly turned her blade against her father. Emboldened by her defiance, she turned to the other concubines, rallying them to the cause. The harem erupted in a chorus of agreement. They screamed that the four-legged lizard was clearly no dragon. Such deception from the Zhao clan deserved nothing less than execution. Zhao trembled in shock. Desperate, he turned to Lord Jia, claiming this was all a conspiracy, led by his illegitimate daughter to frame him. But the tables were turning fast. Lord Jia rolled up his sleeves, shouting in outrage. He called her insolent, demanding to know where her filial piety had gone to speak so rudely to the clan head. But from the crowd of beauties, his own illegitimate daughter stepped forward, calling times him, times the insolent one. The atmosphere was suffocating. The great Chen Dynasty did not belong to the Xiao clan. She revealed the bitter truth: she was only sent to the palace because she was of low birth, and her father had discarded her like trash, placing all his faith in his sons. Lord Jia stood paralyzed, struck dumb by the venomous truth of his abandoned child. The other ministers whispered nervously, asking if Lord Jia would survive the shock. He couldn't process how his submissive daughter had become a rebel, but the harem was far from finished. It was a domino effect of destruction. One beauty stepped up, her eyes burning with righteous fury. She exposed her father's crimes, revealing how he laundered the city's treasury and trampled on the common people. Another turned to Tui, confessing that her clan was forcibly seizing land from the peasantry. One by one, the women of the harem began to denounce their own corrupt families to the emperor. Zhao's mind raced, trying to comprehend how the mighty court was being dismantled by the harem. Chad's warning echoed in his mind: never underestimate this child emperor. Zhao glared at Tui, seeing the terrifying shadow of the harem rising behind him. Tui was already drawing a blade, and for the first time, the powerful minister Zhao felt the cold grip of terror. He wondered, was this boy truly the chosen one sanctioned by the heavens? Tui took a single step forward. To Zhao's trembling eyes, it wasn't a man approaching, but a majestic golden dragon descending from the skies. The chubby minister wondered if his life would end here, crushed by the influence of women he had ignored. Tui didn't hesitate. With a flash of steel, Tui struck. Zhao stood frozen as the blade moved. The entire court gasped in horror, the women covering their mouths in shock. Incredible. With one strike, he had slain the Komodo dragon, or rather, the so-called celestial beast. He then walked calmly toward Lord Jia. His voice was smooth as silk. He declared it wasn't worth ruining their relationship over a silly lizard. There was no need for fear. No matter how strong a beast was, he would cut it down just like that. A subtle threat hung in the air. He suggested they all pretend this farce of a court meeting never happened. He turned his gaze to Zhao, asking for his opinion. The chubby minister swallowed his pride, holding back 1,000 curses, and simply agreed that his majesty was wise. However, moments later, Tui was internally screaming. A system notification popped up. Event complete success. He was devastated. Since Zhao's rebellion failed, the emperor's authority had skyrocketed. He had gained another 2,000 points, bringing his total to a staggering 2,900. The poor guy looked at his hand in despair. It was all his fault for bringing that damned harem into the court. In the background, Shu watched him, puzzled by his lack of joy after such a victory. Tui approached her, asking if she was satisfied with her performance. He paused for a heartbeat, then turned with a sinister, sarcastic smile. It was okay, he said, but it would have been better if she actually understood his true intentions. This girl clearly had a screw loose. He realized she did the right thing for the empire, but she should have acted without his signals. However, His Majesty need not worry. Next time, she vowed to be even more proactive. This was a disaster for Tui. He had completely destroyed Zhao's reputation, meaning that useful tool could no longer help him lose points. Now he only had old Xuan left. Desperate to ruin the country, he asked for help drafting a new imperial edict. Shu immediately asked for the plan. Tui declared that this time they would promote Tianuan to the supreme position of Grand Chancellor. He asked if she had any objections. Before he finished, she was already seated, brush in hand, ready to write. She knew the weight of this order. The Grand Chancellor stood above all ministers. Since the founding of the Great Xian Empire, only the legendary W. Xing Lo held that title over a century ago. Now that Zhao had fallen, Tianuan was ascending to the peak of power. She wondered if this was another 5D chess move by the emperor. Was he planning to target Tianuan next? Perhaps it was the drive, the tiger to swallow, the wolf stratagem pitting the two ministers against each other. Tui stamped the seal, sealing the deal. But suddenly, his blood ran cold. A system warning flashed red before his eyes. His brother had gathered an army in Beijing. The first stage of the rebellion had begun. The Jim Rebellion event had finally concluded, but the cost was steep. He lost 2,000 points, leaving him with a measly 100. Suddenly, a manic laughter bubbled up. He cackled like a man possessed. These damn court points are vanishing into thin air. He slammed the Imperial Seal down again and again, laughing like a complete lunatic. The atmosphere then shifted from comedy to tragedy. We enter a grim tableau of war, a battlefield strewn with the fallen. Half a month later on the southern front, soldiers were raiding the spoils of war. One warrior punctured a cart, and liquid gold spilled forth. He shouted to his comrades, eyes wide with greed. These are military provisions. We feast tonight. Nearby, an imposing figure sat atop his steed, a crimson streak marking his hair like a scar of blood. Commander Wang Jin approached with a bow. Your Majesty, he reported. We have sliced through the south for 10 days straight, without seeing a single royal banner. Our progress has been suspiciously smooth. Indeed, the path had been open. However, the recent skirmishes against the Longxing forces felt wrong. They were too easy, hinting at a deadly trap waiting to spring. The Emperor, with the crimson streak, narrowed his eyes. Explain yourself. Wang Zhan hesitated before revealing the strange nature of their enemy. The Longxing troops are commanded by General Li Chuan. They are not the strongest, but they are considered elites. Yet, they refuse to engage. Instead of crossing blades, they simply abandoned their precious supplies and fled like cowards. Around them, men cheered as they hauled away the loot. General Wang lowered his voice. I believe this is a ploy. Another officer chimed in. That snake Tui is cunning and despicable. He is surely conspiring with Tianuan. The Crimson Emperor threw his head back and laughed. I know, it was all orchestrated. He tapped his temple. I understand my brother's twisted strategies better than anyone. But wait. Look who has arrived in our memories. The scene dissolves into the sepia tones of the past. A strange house and an old tutor testing a young boy. The old master asked, what is the continuation of the phrase about a friend coming from afar? The child smirked, mischief dancing in his eyes. After a theatrical pause, the boy declared, a friend, coming from afar, must be punished. Asterisk whack times. The tutor, his father, struck him on the head. You foolish crown prince, how can I entrust the dynasty to a blockhead like you? But the boy rubbed his head and retorted, my brain works perfectly. I headbutted several soldiers yesterday, and I'm still standing. My skull is iron. The father's silence was colder than winter. Today you have no right to eat. You will copy the sacred texts 100 times. The boy collapsed onto the table as his father left. I'm starving, he muttered, his stomach growling in protest. Suddenly, time's thud, asterisk. A pebble bounced off his head. It was the protagonist Tui, grinning from the window. Scolded again, brother Tusu, being the crown prince, sounds like torture. Tui laughed. I do not understand how your life is harder than mine. Tusu turned his eyes, filled with a complicated mix of love and jealousy. That is exactly why I envy you. Father has such heavy expectations for my name. He wants me to be remembered as a wise commander. Tui shrugged. That is cool, but is it worth it? If you cannot enjoy life, then being an emperor is just a golden cage. Tusu looked at his hands. I never wanted to lead this country. I wanted to command troops, to feel the thrill of the battlefield. Why was I born with this burden? But as the eldest son of the 2D family, he had no choice. Tui's expression turned serious. It is simple then. In the future, I will take the throne for you. I will become the emperor, so you can be free. I would even strip the royal surname from you, so you could roam the world and live as you please. A promise made in the innocence of youth. Back in the present, Tusu rode his horse with grim determination. Tui, you never changed. You were always an idiot. He raised his sword towards the horizon. March, we head straight for the capital, meanwhile deep within the royal palace. The eunuch Shu blocked the path. Leave. His Majesty sees no one. General Chuan was frantic, sweating profusely. Enemy troops are less than 800 miles away. I must speak with His Majesty, Shu replied coldly. Tui is already aware. But he trusts that you, General Chuan, will handle this matter. The Longxing guards are under your command. As Grand Chancellor, it is your duty to shoulder the Emperor's burdens and solve this crisis. Chuan panicked internally. Is Tui trying to shift the blame onto me when the city falls? He shouted. You underestimate Tusu's forces. He is a god of war. Shu raised a hand. Do not worry. Tui knows exactly who his brother is. Your orders are to control the rear troops. Do not take risks. The plan is simple. Show a display of bravery and then retreat immediately. Even if you lose, it will be considered an honor. Chuan was baffled. Win or lose. It does not matter. What kind of strategy is this? What are His Majesty's true intentions? Shu simply turned and left. His Majesty is eager for good news. Do not disappoint him. He closed the heavy doors, leaving the general in shock. Inside the private chambers, Shu stretched his back. Pretending to be solemn in front of that old man is exhausting. Emperor Tui sat with crossed arms, a playful smirk on his face. Did everything go well? Shu nodded. Yes, exactly as you instructed. He will lead the army and ensure a swift retreat. Tui beckoned for a massage. Now we wait. Shu pressed his thumbs into the emperor's shoulders but couldn't hide his worry. Your Majesty, if the northern troops reach the capital, the chaos will be unimaginable. How could you put Chuan in charge at such a critical moment, and to say that winning or losing does not matter? Tui's eyes gleamed with a dangerous light. Oh, do not misunderstand me. When it comes to victory or defeat, of course I care. It would be absolutely magnificent if we lost. He chuckled darkly. After all, I am doing this because our troops are only the second best. A storm was brewing, and the emperor was dancing right in the eye of it. The fate of the great Chen kingdom hung by a thread. He scoffs at the possibility of defeat. After all, he believes his forces are second to none in this realm. Within the vast territories of the great Tran Empire, a conventional defense was a gamble they could not afford to take. He commanded Chami to lure the enemy into the open plains, a killing field where the terrain offered no sanctuary and defeat was all but guaranteed. Once the trap snapped shut, the Jade Rebellion event would be cleared with ease. Su would be left seething in impotent rage. Chen Yuan laughed a manic sound that echoed in the hall. Shu watched him, recognizing that twisted smile. It was the harbinger of great suffering for anyone in his path. Meanwhile, Chen Yuan wandered the courtyard alone. His mind replayed the leader's cold instructions. The outcome was irrelevant, only the chaos mattered. His contemplation was shattered by a frantic shout. It was Xiao Su, charging in with a face twisted by fury, screaming his name. "You dare," Xiao Su roared. Pretending to be ill during court was no coincidence. He seized Chen Yuan by the collar, his knuckles white. "You have aligned yourself with the emperor to plot my downfall." Chen Yuan calmly pried the man's hand away. "Cease this nonsense immediately. I never conspired with his majesty." But the portly minister demanded answers. "Then explain why you were named Grand Chancellor the moment I was stripped of power." Chen Yuan's eyes were cold. "The prince does this to force us into conflict. He wants us to tear each other apart. Besides, Su is marching on clanging as we speak. This is no time for petty squabbles." But Xiao Su was past the point of reason. "Trivial, you call this trivial," he sneered. "I know about the women you planted near the emperor, the royal advisor, the treasurer. Did you truly think you could secretly join forces with the throne?" The accusation hung heavy in the air. He leaned in, voice dripping with malice. "I know who those orphans really are, and I am certain you do not want the emperor to discover their true lineage." Chen Yuan's expression shifted instantly. The mask of indifference cracked. He took a breath, composing himself. "I see. You are desperate, Lord Zhao. Perhaps my previous actions caused a misunderstanding. Allow me to clear it up." He reached into his robes. Xiao Su flinched, expecting a weapon. Instead, he stared in shock as Chen Yuan revealed a heavy, glimmering object. "The golden tiger seal. It is exactly what you think it is," Chen Yuan said softly. "The supreme talisman granting command over the king's army. 30,000 elite troops." He extended the seal toward his rival. "Take it. Command them." Xiao Su recoiled, memories flooding back. Before the late emperor passed, he had split his power to ensure balance, the Jade Seal for administration and the Tiger Seal for warfare. The Jade Seal had gone to Xiao Su to assist in ruling, while the Tiger Seal was entrusted to the generals to defend the realm. It was this delicate balance that allowed them both to survive and wield influence even after the emperor's death. But Xiao Su's ruthless methods had cost him his allies. He held the position, but his power had crumbled to dust. He was a cornered beast. Chen Yuan explained. "Holding this tiger talisman makes me the only genuine threat to the current emperor. That is why he promoted me. He wants me to take this army and break myself against the northern invaders." Looking at the golden artifact, Chen Yuan knew it was a cursed blessing, a hot potato that would burn whoever held it. Better to use it to stabilize Xiao Su. But Xiao Su's eyes narrowed. "You are playing dirty again." He realized the trap instantly. "If I accept this, I must lead the army north. I must face the monster, Su. Against that madman, victory is impossible." He slapped the tiger seal from Chen Yuan's hand. "If you want to send someone to their death, go yourself." The seal clattered to the ground. Chen Yuan's face lost all warmth. "Xiao Su." The name was spoken like a judgment. "Do you think I offer this out of kindness? Look at yourself. Your imperial seal is broken. You have no dignity left before the court. Even Shu has turned her back on you. In this game, you have 0 cards left to play." Xiao Su trembled, sweat beading on his forehead. Are you threatening me?" Chen Yuan bent down. He retrieved the tiger seal from the dirt. "I am simply stating facts. Yes, this talisman is a risk, but it is the only lifeline you have. Claiming I play dirty is irrelevant. The strategy is clear. You still have your title. With this, you can control the Long Shuang forces." Chen Yuan suddenly jammed the golden seal directly into his friend's mouth. "Consider this mercy for the sake of our past." He turned to leave, offering a lazy wave. "Do not waste this opportunity." Xiao Su yanked the object from his mouth, gasping. He knew the truth. Taking these troops to war was a signed death warrant. Yet Chen Yuan was right. This was his only play. He was trapped between the Emperor Su and Chen Yuan. "Fine," he muttered, a dark resolve settling in his eyes. "If I am to be a pawn, then none of you better complain about how I play the game." The scene shifts to an inferno. A village consumed by flames. A woman weeps, clutching her child as soldiers march past with stolen grain. In the days that followed, the villages near the capital were stripped bare. Xiao Su led the looting personally, his humanity discarded. A villager grabbed a soldier's boot, begging, "Please, without this food, we will not survive the winter." Xiao Su looked down with cold contempt. "Idiots. My soldiers are too soft." He turned to his lieutenant. "If I hadn't ordered the fires, we would still be gathering scraps." "We take everything," he commanded. A soldier stepped forward to report, confirming that the ruthless mobilization was complete. The warrior's name was Tanu, and rage simmered in his gut as he watched their own forces pillaging the nearby villages. Before the war drums could even sound, he froze, shouting that stripping the people bare before winter was a death sentence. Such cruelty would stain their master's honor forever. The guards stood like statues until Zia pulled back the carriage curtain. He summoned the commander, his voice dripping with ice, asking if a mere subordinate dared to question his divine judgment. Tanu insisted it was fear for the soldiers' morale, but Zazu sneered, asking if morale alone could defeat the two princes' armies. The commander fell silent, trembling as Zazu declared this was exactly why he devised a strategy to ensure their victory. They would unleash a scorched earth policy, leaving nothing but ash and bone for the enemy army to find. Tanu argued that this madness harmed their own citizens, but Zazu retorted that suffering for the emperor was their greatest privilege. To be sacrificed for the crown was the only honor these peasants would ever know. Back in the safety of his carriage, he sneered, thanking the heavens for the army, while admitting to himself he had no intention of fighting a losing battle. He would drain the land of resources and vanish like smoke before the rebel blades could reach him, leaving the others to rot. The dynasty was vast, and he was already fantasizing about which paradise he would flee to next, his laughter echoing cruelly. Outside, the men looked to their commander for guidance, but he reminded them that as long as Zazu held the tiger talisman, defiance was death. Yet his eyes held a glimmer of rebellion, hinting that they would not follow this tyrant blindly. Meanwhile, high within the forest canopy, Xia moved with the grace of a phantom, witnessing the smoke rising from the ruined villages. She cursed the foolish emperor for this destruction until a figure suddenly burst from the underbrush, startling her. The man raised his hands in surrender, swearing he held no hostility, and was merely a messenger from Commander Huan. He had been waiting specifically for her arrival. Xia narrowed her eyes, her hand hovering near her blade, demanding answers. He explained that the Longxing guards were not enemies of Prince Chu, and the supplies they left were a peace offering. Understanding dawned on her. The easy path had been paved by allies. But the soldier looked toward the burning village with regret. He confessed that the remaining resources were stolen not by the emperor, but by the greed of Zazu. With the tiger talisman in hand, Zazu stripped the commander of power and the land of its life, intent on starving the approaching army. That was the tyrant's strategy, a war of attrition against his own people. That was why Commander Wan had sent him here, to forge an alliance with the Zenai troops. Xia paused, the weight of the truth settling upon her shoulders. When asked for her next move, she let out a sharp whistle. A majestic eagle descended from the heavens as she spoke. She could not verify his words alone, so she would send this intelligence directly to the prince for his divine judgment. The messenger asked if she would deliver it herself, but Xia replied that her blade was needed elsewhere. With a blur of motion, she vanished into the shadows, promising their paths would cross again on the battlefield. High atop the city walls, a flag snapped in the wind. Someone was watching the chaos unfold, and naturally, it was Tuye. Peering through imaginary binoculars, he declared that the pieces were finally falling into place on his chessboard. He noticed Zazu had taken the elite warriors, leaving only the weak and wounded as sacrificial lambs for his brother's army. He eagerly awaited the spectacle of destruction, but a frown soon creased his brow as he sensed an anomaly. Rumors spoke of his brother commanding 100,000 spears, yet the force before him was barely a fraction of that. Did his brother despise him so much that he deemed a full army unnecessary to crush him? Then a lone figure caught his eye, his brother riding toward the gates with no vanguard, completely exposed. Tuye watched in disbelief as an archer drew his bowstring taut, aiming for the solitary prince. Panic seized him. He screamed for the soldier to hold his fire. If Prince Tusu died here, who would conquer the dynasty and complete his plan? But down on the chaotic field, Tusu heard the commotion and looked up, a knowing smile playing on his lips. He called out to Tuye, asking if he was enjoying his performance as the dissolute, foolish emperor who shunned all duty. Tuye tried to maintain his arrogant facade, claiming his infamy was well-earned, but his brother cut him off. Tusu declared that the act had gone on long enough. He could see the kindness hidden behind the mask of the tyrant. The wind seemed to stop. Tuye froze his mind, racing to process the absurdity of the accusation. Kindness him. He wondered if Tusu was hallucinating or speaking of someone else entirely. It made no sense. Then, realization struck him like a lightning bolt. This was psychological warfare. His brother approached alone to feign vulnerability, using soft words to disarm him and lower the city's defenses. Tuye clung to the hope of a bloodless surrender, but the system was cruel. Mere submission would not satisfy the quest conditions. The city had to be conquered by force. Destiny demanded a battle. He roared that his brother, the self-proclaimed god of war, dared to speak of etiquette when the drums of war were already beating. But his brother simply shook his head, bowing with a knowing smile. "No, my emperor." He chuckled, noting that Tuye's tongue was as sharp as a blade. "However, if we speak of ceremony, let the main event begin." At his command, the imperial banners rose, snapping in the wind. A chill ran down Tuye's spine. The atmosphere had shifted. Thunderous orders echoed across the plains. Punish the traitor Xiao Su, cleanse the imperial court. The chant grew deafening. Tu Su kept his gaze locked on Tuye, waiting for the realization to hit. With a sly wink, he whispered, "I never forgot our promise." Instantly, the system chimed. Tuye's mission had failed, but a new path opened. He was now the rightful heir to the throne. With the army stabilized, 5,900 points flooded his account. The poor guy felt his soul leave his body, practically turning into a skeleton from the shock. While the army screamed for blood, the rotund traitor Xiao Su was already fleeing. He apologized to his puppet emperor, refusing to die for a sinking ship. Waving a hasty goodbye, he abandoned them to their fate. Tuye collapsed behind the wall, his legs turning to jelly. Now that the god of war had declared him emperor, his fate was officially sealed. Tu Su spread his arms wide. He hadn't come to fight, but to crown a king. It was the fulfillment of a pact made 10 long years ago. Tuye would bear the burden of the golden throne, while his brother ruled the battlefield. For a warrior like Tu Su, the suffocating life of an emperor was a fate worse than death. The crown was a shackle, but today he had finally broken free. Tuye stammered, his mind racing. "I didn't agree to this. It wasn't my doing." Desperate, he suggested they let the past go, but asked about Xiao Su. His brother let out a terrifying laugh. "Who does that insect think he is?" Xiao Su had forged decrees and abused the tiger talisman to ravage the land. But Tu Su was one step ahead. He had already deployed 80,000 troops to crush the north. It wouldn't take long before Xiao Zuo's head was served as a coronation gift. Suddenly, Tuye's expression darkened. Wait, where was his brother actually going? Was this all just a grand speech? The gates threw open. Tuye charged out on horseback, giving chase. Yan finally understood. Xiao Zuo's chaos with the talisman had forced their hand. It was Tuye's destiny to slay that bastard. The scene shifted to the chaotic city streets. Soldiers struggled to hold the line, while Xiao Zuo lashed his whip across a commander's face. "This is the price for conspiring with rebels. You dare betray me and side with the enemy." He screamed that defying the Emperor of Qian was a capital offense. "A crime like this warrants the execution of your entire bloodline." The tyrant panted, visibly exhausted from his own cruelty. A voice called out from the shadows. Xiao Zuo sneered. "Can you no longer stomach the sight? This isn't a place for tourists." He challenged the commander, asking if he dared to commit regicide to seize the field. The commander hesitated, signaling his men to stand down and leave. But as the soldier tried to speak, Xiao Zuo's screeching voice cut through the air. "As the Longxing army, you exist to obey the Tiger Talisman. This token represents the Emperor himself. How dare you rebel against the kingdom?" He stepped closer, his presence toxic. "Defying me is defying the heavens. Leave now." The commander gritted his teeth, ordering the man to retreat immediately. But Xiao Zuo blocked the path. "Stop. I didn't say the intruder could leave so easily. He invaded my tent and disrespected my authority. That is treason, and by imperial law, the only punishment for such actions is death." He loomed over the man, eyes gleaming with malice. "How shall I end you, slice you into 1,000 pieces, roast you like a pig? Or, perhaps the simplest way, cutting your throat?" Suddenly, a hand clamped onto Xiao Zuo's arm. Everyone froze. It was Tuye, standing behind him with an aura of death. "Keep testing your luck, you wretched pig, and you'll die right here." The fat man turned bewildered. "Why? Why would I die?" Tuye grabbed his head, forcing him to look towards the horizon. "Open your eyes. Can you see what is coming for you? 80,000 northern wolves are marching to mount your head on a pike." The war cry shook the earth. "Purge the court, execute Xiao Zuo." The chubby tyrant turned pale, realizing he had walked into a trap. Tuye severed the ropes, binding the commander, shaking his head in disbelief. To lose the loyalty of the Longxing camp at such a critical moment. Your talent for seeking death is truly unmatched. If I hadn't arrived, you were already a walking corpse. With a sharp snap, Tui severs the bindings. Xiao O mutters that this is impossible, but then, a dark laugh bubbles up from his throat. He claims he understands everything now. He nearly fell for such a pathetic bluff. Obviously, a tyrant like Tui wouldn't possess the mercy to save him. No, Tui must have fled the burning ruins of Kenning like a coward. That is the only reason he stands here. Tui looks on bewildered, but Xiao O doubles down. He sneers, admitting the rumors of a court purge almost fooled him. But he knows the truth. If Tui had actually ordered such a thing, Tui would have been the first corpse on the pile. Dai Xiao O charges, blade raised high, terrifying the onlookers. But suddenly, a shadow moves from the periphery to intercept the blow. The commander screams Yuan Hu's name. Xiao O spins around, eyes wild with bloodlust, shouting that this fool must also be desperate to meet the Grim Reaper. With a vicious upward slash, Xiao O cleaves Yuan Hu in two. The poor loyalist collapses, life fading instantly. Tui watches in silence as the traitor turns his gaze back to him. Xiao O points his dripping sword at the emperor, demanding total submission. When we leave this camp, he hisses, I will present your head to the new regime. It will be my greatest achievement. But Tui simply stands there, calm amidst the chaos, and quietly speaks Xiao O's name. What do you want? The traitor snaps. Xiao O warns Tui to stop acting like a sovereign. Stop calling yourself emperor. I am the one in charge now. I, the great Xiao, decide if you draw another breath. Anyone who opposed my grand design in court is already dead, even your precious concubines. He grins maliciously, thinking Tui's time is up. Don't worry, he mocks. Those women I placed by your side, they were just tools. Spies sent to watch a puppet dance. Especially that woman Shu. She is nothing but second-hand goods. I passed her around to countless men before she got to you. But when a tool breaks, when it turns against its master, it loses all value, he snarls. She has only one fate left. Destruction. Total erasure from this world. But Tui, a terrifying aura begins to radiate from his body. He repeats Xiao O's name over and over like a death knell. Slowly, he turns toward the chubby traitor. Asterisk crack times. A devastating punch connects with Xiao's face. The fat man goes tumbling across the dirt. Xiao O scrambles up, dizzy and disoriented as Tui advances like a storm. You filthy pig, Tui spits. Everything you do is cruel and wretched. He declares he is tired of it all and slams a fist into Xiao's chest. I am fed up, Tui roars, delivering another brutal blow to the face. I am sick of this transmigration. I don't care about the mission anymore. It has already failed. With a savage kick to the groin, Tui looks to the heavens. Curse this system. You can all go to hell. Xiao Zuo writhes on the ground, screaming in agony. Tui looms over him, demanding he repeat his words about tools that no longer serve their master. Destroy them, you said. Tui's voice trembles with rage. I was so afraid of leaving heirs in this doomed world that I lived like a monk. I did everything to maintain this empire. Even though it wasn't what I wanted, I exercised daily to prepare this body. I went 3 days without sleep, designing those clothes. I forced myself to learn the cursed language of this realm. And after all that, you still have the audacity to call me useless. The force of his anger sends the chubby man stumbling backward. Xiao O bounces out of the tent, crashing into the dirt outside. He collapses, arms spread, mind reeling from Tui's incomprehensible rant. That is when he notices the silence. The soldiers are staring at him. He turns desperate. Why are you just standing there? Protect me. But the soldiers do nothing. They avert their gaze, pretending he doesn't exist. A cold shiver runs down Xiao O's spine. He sees Tui step out of the tent. The soldiers instantly part ways, clearing a path for the true emperor. At that moment, Xiao Zuo sees it, the look in Tui's eyes. From the very beginning, Xiao had been wrong. He slams his head into the ground, kowtowing violently. I have learned my lesson. What exactly were you wrong about? Tui asks, his voice like ice. Xiao Zuo stammers I shouldn't have treated the troops like my personal property. Tui places a heavy hand on his shoulder. Xiao Zuo confesses further. And I shouldn't have fled the battlefield. I was a coward. Our boy grabs the traitor by the hair, yanking his head back. Xiao O babbles, I learned I was wrong, but Tui isn't finished. Wealth, power, armies, the throne Tui lists them with disdain. None of that mattered to me. All I wanted was to trust people to do their jobs. But everyone betrayed me, Tui shouts. Xiao Zuo, tears streaming, asks, what trust? Who betrayed you? Tui glares down at him. Say it out loud. Confused and terrified, Xiao Zuo whispers I betrayed him. Asterisk wham times Tui punches him in the face. Louder, shout it so the heavens can hear. Xiao screams at the top of his lungs. I betrayed the emperor. I betrayed the entire Chen Dynasty. I betrayed the people I stole from them and caused them endless suffering. I am a sinner of this dynasty. He stands there for a moment trembling before slamming his face back into the dirt, begging for mercy. Tui just sighs, looking up at the sky. I'm so tired, he murmurs. Xiao O keeps smashing his forehead into the ground, feigning guilt. But suddenly, Xiao's expression twists into a demonic snarl. He grabs a hidden knife. I would never submit to you. As Tui turns, Xiao Zuo lunges. A desperate, lethal strike. Blood splatters across the air. But whose blood is it? Xiao O's face contorts in shock. Shu, who had been watching from the shadows, stands behind him, her hand rigid from a chop to his neck. Tui glances at her unimpressed. Took you long enough to make a move. Xiao, vision blurring, wonders if Tui knew she was there the entire time. Among the army amidst the chaos, Tui locks eyes with her. The system chime rings out in his mind times. The leader of the Imperial Guard is wavering. Asterisk. She holds the unconscious Xiao Zuo, torn between old loyalties and the man standing before her. Did Tui truly know everything from the start? Zi Xiao crumbles to the dust. Xia confirms he is merely unconscious, not dead. Yet she senses the Emperor's dark intent. The tyrant stands in silence, lost in calculation. From the beginning, he believed this rebel would help him destroy the empire. But alas, he was completely wrong. If he wants the kingdom to fall, he must wield the hammer himself. He turns to Xia, his voice cold as ice. Shu's fate belongs to the Longxiang army now. He is of no further use to me. With a single command, he purges the traitor from the Zhou Empire for good. A system notification chimes. Traitor eliminated. Earned 5,000 national points. Xia stands frozen, bewildered by his terrifying competence. He crushed a rebellion and prevented a civil war single-handedly. Watching him depart with his 10,900 points, she wonders what kind of monster he truly is. Meanwhile, the main army marches forward. A soldier signals the alert. Prepare for battle. The rebel troops are directly ahead. Suddenly, a trembling finger points toward the horizon. General Wang. Look there. The general turns, his curiosity shifting to pure horror. A single trooper approaches, carrying a gruesome trophy. It was Zi Xiao, his body impaled on a spear, his tongue lolling out in death. A traitor's corpse displayed like a banner of war. The scene shifts into a nightmare. Screams echo in the darkness. Coward, filthy traitor. She runs blindly, but a cold hand snatches her ankle. She slams onto the hard ground. She scrambles to turn around. A voice hisses, "Sister, why do you ignore us?" A skeleton stares back with hollow eyes. "Have you forgotten us? Why have you not avenged our deaths? You must survive. You must kill Zed Xiao." She tries to crawl away, but an ocean of skulls drags her back. Standing before her is a monstrous, demonic version of Zi Xiao. He roars her name. "You betrayed me." A tool that bites its master must be broken. Despair consumes her, but suddenly an explosion rocks the void. Smoke swirls and clears. A blade rests at the demon's throat. She looks up to see a towering, majestic figure. "Your Majesty." A gentle voice calls her from the abyss. She gasps, waking up in her own bed. A servant girl rushes to her side. His Majesty has returned safely. He is summoning the court to the Grand Hall. She adds softly, "And the traitor, Zi Xiao, has been executed." Tears of relief flood her eyes. It is finally over. The next day, the sun rises on a victorious empire. Our protagonist returns to the capital to a hero's welcome. But internally, he is seething. My plan is to doom this damn country. So what have I actually destroyed? Nothing. The court is in perfect order. The harem is fiercely loyal. Where is my femme fatale assassin? Nowhere. General Tusu is determined to keep him on the throne. Even the scheming Tianuan, the man who was supposed to be his trump card for ruin, has become a model citizen after the rebellion. With all these legends working together, the nation's power has skyrocketed past 15,000. How am I supposed to destroy a country that runs this perfectly? Beside him, Tianuan notices the emperor's sour mood. Why is he unhappy after such a victory? Tianuan follows the emperor's gaze and sees General Tusu making a throat-slitting gesture. A chill runs down his spine. The general isn't happy because I am still alive. The delicate balance of power has shattered. Tusu has sided with the emperor. That leaves Tianuan alone and vulnerable. He realizes he is the next target for elimination. I must make a move before the blade falls. Tusu looks confused as Tianuan steps forward to speak. Rumors had already spread. The emperor himself had marched to the front lines and executed the traitor. It was a display of dominance that satisfied the bloodlust of the army. However, the truth remained. The traitor only controlled the troops because the emperor gave him the tiger talisman. Tianuan had failed to stop that transfer of power. Therefore, the fault was technically his. He decides to gamble everything. I accept any punishment. I am ready to resign as Grand Chancellor. He bows low, waiting for mercy. But the emperor just scoffs. Shut your mouth. I am not in the mood for your pathetic excuses. Internally, the emperor rolls his eyes. Look at this cunning old fox, blaming the dead to save his own skin. The emperor then drops a bombshell. I am going on a journey. I wish to travel incognito across the Chen Dynasty. We will discuss your position when I return. Tianuan blinks in confusion. The court just stabilized. Why would His Majesty leave now? He tries to protest to talk sense into the tyrant, but the Emperor cuts him off. Are you daring to command me? Tianuan's face goes pale. I wouldn't dare. The Emperor knows the truth. He cannot rely on anyone inside the palace to destroy this kingdom. They are all too competent. He needs an outside force. A cataclysm. To the north, the Kangalang tribes are fierce. Warriors that even the southern regions fear to face. To the south across the sea lies the nation of Jing. Their leader, Xu Li, has survived countless wars against the previous emperor. And then, there is the Red Sleeve Army, a rebel faction with followers scattered like seeds in the wind. The first two are too far away. But the rebels, if he can find the Red Sleeve Army, he can force them to attack his own nation. The Emperor of Chen will become the ultimate spy. He will lead the rebels to burn his own empire to the ground. Now that is a story I would read. A wicked grin spreads across his face. Tianuan watches trembling as the prince smirks at the chaos to come. Under the flickering light of torches, the Red Sleeve Army's barracks came alive with a grotesque ritual. Men in demonic masks danced wildly in the shadows. Whispers of ominous tidings and fortunate omens filled the air. In the center, surrounded by a sea of candles, a woman sat like a dark queen. 3 months have passed since the new emperor ascended, she declared, her voice cold. The court is in turmoil, yet the Quan dynasty's heavenly luck has not run dry. This was Wu Dongguan, the feared leader of the Red Sleeve Army. Though ironically, their robes were as black as the abyss itself. Perhaps the name was a mistake of history, but no one dared correct her. She demanded to know the nature of the bad news. To the common folk, this rebellion was also known as the Honggu Army. But while they plotted, destiny was already moving elsewhere. Cloaked figures turned to watch a new arrival in the city. It was our protagonist Tu Yi strolling through the streets with Xia at his side. Xia warned him that the northern region was a chaotic mess, noting that even the great Tu Su struggled to maintain order here. I have told you 8,000 times to be cautious, she scolded. But Tu Yi was distracted by the strange energy of Longxing City. This was the sacred ground, where the Tu family rose to power 500 years ago. Their ancestors had slain a dragon here, offering its head to the heavens. From that blood and glory, the Tu family gained influence until they established the mighty Quan dynasty. Longxing had always been their stronghold. Yet recently, foreign powers and rebellions had begun to take root in this ancestral soil. Tu Yi narrowed his eyes. His father and brother lived for war, so why would they allow the Red Sleeve Army to stabilize here? Inu had insisted that Xia accompany him, refusing to let him travel alone. But the problem wasn't Xia, it was the tale they had picked up. A group of men followed them, their disguises so terrible it was almost insulting. Tu Yi sighed, wondering why they bothered hiding at all. One of the spies turned to his comrade. Is His Majesty staring at us? Do you think he realizes we are following him? The other spy gave a confident thumbs up. Relax. I used a special concealment magic. We are invisible to the naked eye. Xia ignored their antics and scolded Minister Chuan, who was hiding among them. You should be in the capital handling state affairs, Chuan whispered back. His Majesty is too cunning. Leaving me in that ministerial position is a trap. With Yuzu still in the capital, my life hangs by a thread. The safest place is right here, secretly shadowing my master. Xia shook her head in confusion. I do not understand your logic. Chuan grinned. You will understand in time. As long as we maintain this perfect disguise, everything will be fine. However, judging by Tu Yi's deadpan expression, their cover was blown long ago. Let them do what they want, Tu Yi muttered. If they are that determined to stalk me, so be it. Suddenly Xia shoved Tu Yi behind her, her hand flying to her weapon. Master, look out! A group of small-time bandits blocked their path. Judging by their attire, they were foot soldiers of the Red Sleeve Army. A bald man brandished a saber, sneering at them. I haven't seen you in the city before. Are you spies from the Imperial Court? Xia prepared to slaughter them, but Tu Yi placed a hand on her shoulder. Hold back. This is actually perfect. I was wondering where their leader was hiding. Moments later, they were escorted up the stairs to the bandits' stronghold. The vibrant Wu Dongguan sat amidst the candlelight. But to their horror, she was casually snacking on a handful of live scorpions. This woman was no ordinary rebel. She was a master of the dark arts, capable of manipulating human hearts and twisting minds. She had gathered refugees from across the land, building an army to destroy the Quan dynasty. Yet the aura around her was deeply unsettling. Strange insect-like creatures crawled from her mouth as she spoke. Good heavens, she licked her lips. You are bold to come to Longxing. Tu Yi smirked. Does the Black Sleeve Army not welcome refugees? I thought courage was not a requirement for entry. She laughed to sound like dry leaves. Look at you. No matter how you dress, you are no refugee. Her eyes locked onto Xia. And that woman beside you, she has the face of someone who walks in shadows and spills blood for a living. Tu Yi clapped his hands. Impressive. As expected of the great leader, nothing escapes your gaze. He straightened his posture. I am a secret envoy from the nation of Jing sent by my emperor to sow chaos in your land. We share a common enemy. I have come specifically to seek cooperation with the Red Sleeve Army. Suddenly, a heavy object hit the floor, startling him. Dongguan stood up, her presence filling the room. Cooperation sounds wonderful. She approached him, her voice dropping to a whisper. Since you have revealed your identity, I shall do the same. Her hand brushed against a peculiar spot on his chest. You must also be interested in the dragon root hidden within the empire. Tu Yi stiffened. She had touched a vital point, and her words struck deep. Was she talking about the artifact, or did she know who he really was? She circled him like a predator. Everyone knows the dragon root is about to resurface. That is why the nation of Jing is here. Seeing his confusion, Dongguan elaborated. Every 500 years, a dragon emperor is born to the nation. Whoever severs his head and harvests the root will gain the emperor's power, inheriting an aura that rivals the gods themselves, to dominate the heavens and the earth. The last time the dragon emperor descended, a hero from the Tu family severed his head and harnessed that divine energy to forge a legendary dynasty. Back in those blood-soaked days, Tianuan fought alongside his sworn brother Chu to slay the beast, but Chu gained nothing but battle scars and bitterness. The world spiraled into chaos, and from the ashes, two rival powers rose to claim their own destiny with the dragon's essence. Tianuan established the great Qian Empire in the north, while Chu gathered the scraps in the south to birth the Jing Dynasty. Now 500 years have drifted by, and the cycle of fate turns once more. A new dragon emperor has awakened. Whoever claims this beast's head will hold the power to reshape the world. The system chimes, notifying Tu Yi that he has finally located the trail to the dragon emperor's lost aura. To continue his path to supremacy, he needs information from this mysterious woman. His blood pumps with excitement. Infiltrating the Red Sleeve Army was a masterstroke of strategy. He looks her in the eye and asks if Dongguan also seeks the dragon aura to seize control of the realms. However, Dongguan scoffs. She possesses the spirit of a rebel, not a ruler, and has zero interest in the cold throne of an empress. Yet she knows well that the Jing nation has lusted after this power for 5 centuries. She steps dangerously close, whispering that these lands dance to her tune. So, with her alliance, victory would be all but guaranteed. Suddenly, she grips his chin with a predatory smile, demanding to know what she gains by aiding the Jing nation. But Tu Yi is no fool. He studied the ancient chronicles before stepping into this den. Dongguan was once a daughter of the Fang nation, a village erased from the map during the brutal wars against Qian. Amidst that hellscape, she encountered an immortal sage and mastered the arts of clast, medicine, and arcane magic. She used these gifts to heal the broken souls who suffered just like her. Bit by bit, her legend grew among the refugees, until she founded the Red Sleeve Army, a force dedicated to the absolute annihilation of the Qian Empire. In the history books Tu Yi had read of many such tragic figures, lonely ghosts driven by the flames of war. He realizes her eccentric mystical persona is merely a mask, a necessary armor to survive in these merciless times. Tu Yi finally speaks, proposing an alliance built on 2 solemn vows. The first was the total destruction of the Qian kingdom, a vengeance they both craved. Dongguan retorts that she knows the Jing nation's ambition is to unify the heavens, so the fall of Qian wasn't truly a promise, it was an inevitability written in the stars. Tu Yi smiles, declaring that is exactly why he offers the second promise. His leader desires to be immortalized as a sage for the ages, aiming to rewrite the laws and establish a kingdom of heaven on earth, essentially to bring eternal peace to the chaotic world. Dongguan's cheeks flush with color, and she straightens her posture, struck by his words. Tu Yi clears his throat and prepares to unveil the blueprint of his utopia. He plans to weaponize modern political concepts to dazzle these ancient minds. While he weaves his web of words, a pair of eyes watches from the shadows. Chen Yuan cannot fathom why Tu Yi would meet with Dongguan at such a critical juncture, and the frustration burns because he cannot hear a single word. Of their exchange, he orders Xiao to deploy her magic so they can eavesdrop on the meeting. Xiao warns that their target is a master of the arcane arts, and spying from this range invites death. Still, she begins folding a delicate paper, Crane murmuring that there might be a subtle way to breach their privacy. She activates a shadow capture spell. The tiny paper construct flutters to a branch directly behind Tu Yi and lands silently. Tu Yi is passionately explaining his vision of uplifting the common people through agrarian reform, advanced agriculture, and radical policies. He speaks of booming trade, the free flow of resources, and the pillars of education and technology. Chen Yuan frowns, asking why the audio sounds so fragmented. Xiao explains they are simply too far away for clarity. Even so, Chen Yuan grasps the essence. It is a discourse on governance filled with a terrifying wisdom, yet it sounds like a dream too vast for this primitive era. Suddenly, the origami transmits a phrase that stops his heart: all men are born equal. Xiao smiles, calling equality a romantic notion. But for Chen Yuan, terror grips his soul upon hearing those forbidden words. He recalls that in the past, a reformer named Xing Lo dared to challenge the nobility and was torn asunder by 5 horses. If everyone under the heavens were treated as equals, the Chen Dynasty would crumble into dust. The nobles and the emperor himself would be inviting their own doom with no place to hide. He is about to declare that this madness marks the end, but then he sees Tu Ye still speaking with fire in his eyes. The commoners around him are smiling, captivated by his voice, and this sight makes Chen Yuan freeze in introspection. He admits a deep sense of shame, while he and Xiao were plotting petty treason to overthrow his Majesty. Tu Ye possessed the ambition to elevate the entire world. Meanwhile, Tu Ye raises his arms, collapsing in theatrical exhaustion. He is drained. After his grand speech, and the people rush to offer him water, Dongwan praises him, admitting his vision is dangerously seductive, and if realized, it truly would create a paradise on earth. He grins, saying he knew a woman of her intellect would understand. But then, the atmosphere shifts instantly. Her expression turns ice cold, and she asks if he takes her for a fool who would swallow such sweet lies. The Jing nation would never implement such radical policies or honor those vows. Tu Ye is startled by her sudden hostility. She demands to know his true identity, for she has already deduced he is not from the Jing nation. The logic is simple. When Lord Chu founded the Jing dynasty in the south, he was a man who needed to gain power here was a fool's errand, for the Jing nation had always been shackled by the chains of corrupt nobles and ancient clans. Promising reform in a snake pit like this, Tu Ye realized too late that his advanced policies were a death sentence in disguise. He had underestimated the dark history of Jing panic set in as he desperately scrambled for a lie to save his skin. Suddenly, Dongwan stepped forward, her presence looming like a mountain. Back down, she commanded her troops, her eyes bored into them. You dare tread on red sleeve army soil. Speak quickly or your lives end here. Tu Ye decided to gamble everything. You possess sharp eyes, he confessed, feigning a heavy heart. I am indeed from the Chen nation. Dongwan's killing intent spiked. I knew it. The dogs of Chen are the ones I despise the most. Wait, Tu Ye cried out, raising a hand. I may be born of Chen, but I pray for its downfall every single night. In the shadows, Shen Yin trembled. The emperor is walking a tightrope. Should we intervene? She whispered. Chuan held her back, his eyes narrowing. Trust in his majesty. The dragon always has a path, though I wonder what game he plays now. Then with the confidence of a king, Tu Ye dropped the bombshell. I am the Grand Chancellor, the Prime Minister of Chen Li Chuan. The real Li Chuan stood frozen, his jaw nearly hitting the floor. His soul almost left his body in sheer confusion. Dongwan blinked, taken aback. You. The legendary Li Chuan. Tu Ye nodded. I served that old tyrant to build a utopia. My dream was a nation of equality. I endured that old dog's reign, waiting for the moment he would finally perish. Dongwan lowered her weapon slightly. I heard the old emperor died. Rumors say 2 ministers, Tianuan and Zao, backed a useless prince. But then, she continued, a dark horse named Tu Su emerged, placing that puppet Tu Ye on the throne. Exactly, Tu Ye lied through his teeth. I have no idea why Tu Su betrayed the cause to support that incompetent child. Word has it that Minister Zao was executed, Dongwan probed, and Li Chuan was stripped of power and thrown into the dungeons. Tu Ye didn't miss a beat. That damned Tu Ye tried to silence me. I barely escaped the capital with my life. Dongwan studied him skeptical. They say Li Chuan is a genius whose intellect shakes the heavens. But they also say he is an old man. Her eyes narrowed. Tu Ye laughed nervously. Ah, behold my secret cultivation technique. I maintain my youth through the mystic arts, but listen, as long as that fool, Tu Ye, reigns, my vision for the world is dead. Dongwan scoffed. Are you trying to emulate Sima Yi, the minister who played the fool only to steal the kingdom? History tells us how that story ends, she warned. With the minister donning the dragon robe and seizing the heavens, Tu Ye raised his hands in surrender. Heaven forbid I have no desire for the throne, only justice. We shall see, Dongwan muttered. But before we discuss alliances, I must deal with the vermin infestation. The rats hiding in the shadows. Xia froze, but before she could twitch, Dongwan was already upon her. Did you enjoy the show? Dongwan whispered, her voice dripping with venom. Xia reached for an escape talisman, desperate to flee. But Dongwan spun her movements faster than the eye could follow. Impressive talisman arts, Dongwan smirked. But your cultivation is far too weak to stand against me. Thunder roared, 8 direction, assault lightning erupted, reducing Xia's disguise to ash and leaving her trembling. Just as the real Tianuan tried to act, a hand clamped onto his shoulder like a vice. Dongwan was already there. To have such a skilled bodyguard, she grinned, her aura flaring. You must be an extraordinary figure yourself, old man. 2 big catches in one day. Tu Yi felt his stomach drop. His plan had crumbled into dust. Why was that boy staring blankly? Dongwan demanded, who are you really? Tu Yi's mind raced. He had already stolen Tianuan's identity. Could Tianuan pretend to be the emperor? Impossible. The age difference was absurd. One wrong word meant death. Suddenly, the trembling Tianuan spoke. His mind drifted back to a memory, distinct and clear. A flashback revealed his father. My son, the old man asked, why do you bury yourself in these scrolls? Knowledge, the young Tianuan had answered. I read to know nothing more. He had never sought a greater purpose. His father sighed. A scholar must establish a heart for the heavens and earth. To secure a future for the common people, that is the way of the sages. To carry the torch of wisdom for generations to come, but his father was no saint. The talk of serving the people was merely a mask for his true ambition. What the old man truly craved was not justice but immortality through fame. He wanted his name etched in stone. The words echoed in Tianyuan's soul. Life is fleeting, 100 years pass like a dream, and we turn to dust. Only by carving your name into the annals of history can a man truly defeat death. To be etched in the annals of history alongside the sages of old. Through their sacred teachings left behind, one could achieve true immortality. Although Tianyuan despised his father's lectures, they were a compass in the mist. But peace is a fragile illusion. The thundering of hooves signaled the apocalypse. Fire swallowed the village whole as the ravages of war arrived. Amidst the ashes, a harsh truth struck him. The pride of a scholar is dust before the scythe of the reaper. All his devotion to the pen was nothing more than a cruel joke. He glanced sideways and spotted a desperate soul clinging to a tree begging for salvation, crying out that he hadn't tasted food in 3 days. The old man's pleas were relentless until Tianyuan approached with a mercy offering. The starving man snatched the food like a wild beast. Tianyuan urged him to eat slowly, believing no one would steal from the weak. How naive he was. When he lifted his head, a pack of wolves in human skin surrounded them, eyes glowing with hunger fixed upon him. Do you have more? One rasped. If you can give charity, you must be hoarding a feast, another shouted. Madness took over. They charged at him, demanding every scrap of sustenance. But suddenly, a shadow blocked their path. It was his father. Tianyuan froze his mind, unable to process the chaos. His father glanced back with a final, sorrowful smile. Tianyuan stumbled back, falling down the treacherous mountain slope. As he scrambled to his feet, the mob's voice drifted down. That one has no food. But his flesh will sustain us. From the abyss below, only his father's agonizing screams echoed, begging them to stop. In that moment of blood and tears, the lesson finally sank in. The path of the scholar was not meant for the weak, nor for the masses. True study was not about teaching. It was about leaving a scar upon the world. Not a guide, but a monster that holds the lives of millions in its palm. With this dark resolve, he ascended to prime minister at a record age. Gazing down at the emperor's corpse, his eyes were cold. Even the son of heaven dies like a dog. In the end, you were merely a useful pawn. He turned his killing intent toward the trembling physicians. If you trash cannot cheat death, then what use are you to me? Shedding tears is insufficient. You shall all accompany him to the underworld. Bury them alive. The screams of the damned filled the air. He stood like a statue amidst the slaughter until Xiao Su approached. The late emperor wished for Tu Su to take the throne. What is your command? Tianyuan scoffed at the notion. The emperor's name is now merely ink on paper. Destiny has placed the realm in our hands. In this Kaiyang Empire, I shall stand above the heavens themselves and rule this broken world. Back in the present reality, Dongwan's aura flared as she interrogated him. Who are you really? Speak or face your doom. The pressure was suffocating. Tu Yi's mind raced. He considered impersonating Tu Yi, but the timeline was impossible. He opened his mouth and made a desperate gamble. With regal grace, he removed his hat. I am Tu Jun, the true emperor of Kaiyang. The sheer audacity of the lie froze the room. He was claiming to be the protagonist's dead father. I did not perish, he declared, while the real Tu Yi stood frozen in shock. Dongwan stood in silence, her rage boiling like magma. Suddenly, she hoisted him up by the throat. Are you mocking me, trash? But Tu Yi remained in character, playing the weary exile. He knew her hatred for the Xiao Dynasty ran bone deep. If I were not desperate, I would never have stepped foot in this tiger's den. He spat out the words, feigning hatred for his own identity. That rebellious son, Tu Yi, he is the cause of my ruin. That ungrateful wretch was ambitious and cunning, hiding his fangs behind a fool's mask. I always thought him incompetent. But I was blind. In the background, Shadow was on the verge of exploding. How dare this bastard usurp the Emperor's title? But the impostor continued his masterful performance. I never imagined my own flesh and blood would ally with vipers to steal my throne, a scheme years in the making. He even corrupted Xiao Su. Dongguan paused, intrigued by these spilled state secrets. Why was he revealing the court's darkness? The impostor continued. The only loyal soul was Tianuan. In this twisted narrative, the real Tu Yi was now playing the loyal dog. When Tu Yi moved to seize power, I had no choice. I faked my death to escape their clutches. I kept Tianuan in the court to sow discord between my traitorous son and Xiao Su. But fate is cruel. My other unfilial son, Tu Su, aided the traitor Tu Yi to hunt me down. Shadow clenched her fists in silent fury. He wasn't just stealing Tu Yi's identity, but slandering Tu Su as well. She swore this liar would meet a gruesome end. Dongguan sneered. So you fled here like a beaten dog. Still in her grip, he looked toward the disguised Tu Yi, my loyal minister. He insulted me to maintain his cover and endured hell for my sake. Shadow prepared to strike. Enough of this farce. But suddenly the disguised Tu Yi clasped his hands in a respectful salute. Insulting your majesty was a necessary evil. I deserve death 1,000 times over. Shadow froze. The boy was playing along. Dongguan threw the emperor to the ground with disdain. I care not for your tragic play. My hatred for Kai Yang is eternal. You dared enter my domain unarmed. Do not expect to leave unscathed. The impostor slowly rose, his gamble having bought them time. He claimed to be nothing more than a fallen monarch, a man stripped of his throne. While she could easily end his life, he knew that wasn't the path she desired. Because the Chen Dynasty would remain standing, simply executing a king who had already lost his crown wouldn't bring her the satisfaction she craved. She sought something far greater. Dongguan paused, a dark glint in her eyes, and agreed. Taking one life was meaningless. She wanted to witness the entire family tear itself apart. She wanted the nation to crumble, the country to burn, and the royal bloodline to be wiped from history. Shurin trembled in terror, but Tui was throwing a celebration in his mind, thinking that the destruction of the nation was the perfect scenario for his master plan. Pretending to be. His father was a stroke of genius. He wouldn't die today because Dongguan needed a pawn to sow chaos. He mentally crowned himself the destroyer. As expected, the only person he could truly rely on in this world was his own brilliant self. Dongguan then cut to the chase, asking if, beyond seeking the Dragon Emperor's power, he also coveted the strength of her legions. He admitted it without hesitation, since the Cayenne Kingdom's army was the second strongest in the land. Together they could annihilate the dynasty. But Dongguan silenced him instantly. She told him to stop dreaming, even though she yearned to watch the royal family implode using her army to aid. The enemy was crossing a line she would never accept. Tui let out a laugh, his mind spinning a new web. If Dongguan wouldn't aid him, then why not support Chen Yuan instead? Immediately Tui slapped a dumbfounded expression onto his face. He confessed that after the betrayal of his sons, he was weary of the heavy crown. Dongguan looked skeptical, but he insisted. Not only did he want to discard his two ungrateful sons, but he intended to place a true ruler on the throne. Someone who actually cared. For the people, he claimed Shamu was the chosen one. The soldiers around them, exhausted by this endless monologue, simply sat down waiting for the drama to end. Dongguan sighed her patience, snapping, and ordered them to throw him to the dogs. Tui, maintaining his disguise as Tianuan, shouted that he could prove his identity. He revealed the Imperial Seal, an artifact meant for the future successor, and the new Empress Dongguan blinked in confusion, wondering when she had accepted the title of Empress. But then, the realization struck her. Everything he said might actually be the truth. Tui stood there, looking utterly devastated. But while Tui played the fool, he declared this was a wedding gift. Suddenly, a hand clamped onto his shoulder. Dongguan smirked. Considering his ruthless philosophy for governing the country, he didn't seem like such a bad person after all. She admired his vision. He was worthy of being her man, and without further delay, she announced it was time for them to consummate this marriage. Chuan tried to speak, but she struck a pressure point on the back of his neck before he could utter a word of protest. She scooped him up, bridal style, carrying him off like a prize. She tossed a comment to Xia, not to worry. She wouldn't break her new master too badly. Unless, of course, Xia wanted to join the festivities. The girl turned bright red, screaming for that pervert to shut up. Meanwhile, as Tui was hauled away, his mind raced. Everything now depended on his majesty. He must become the true dragon. Tui couldn't afford to fail because now Tianuan's dream of being etched into history rested in his hands. Later that night, Xia was standing guard when someone advised her to step back. Apparently, she had stayed behind to witness the chaos unfold. And unfold it did. The night was long, and the roosters were already crowing loudly by the time the door creaked open. Dongguan stepped out, stretching like a satisfied predator. She made a noise of disdain toward Xia, who glared back with burning rage. Then they noticed a withered figure dragging himself out of the room. It was Tianuan, or rather Tui. He looked like a skeleton drained of all vitality. He crawled forward thinking he was nearly sucked dry, but for the sake of destroying the nation, any sacrifice was worth it. He was amazed at how bold Chuan was to not only bring the Imperial Seal but also sell him out like this. The future, however, was promising. Dongguan told him to stop dwelling on the past, because it was time to head to the barracks and start planning. The poor guy, still seeing stars, wondered if they were really starting so soon. Deep in the mountains, a torch flickered in the darkness. It was their group, moving through a hidden cave. Dongguan announced they were almost there, but Tui felt a strange chill run down his spine. Suddenly, they saw the exit. Dongguan declared they were finally about to meet the main force. Everyone was stunned by the sight beyond. The cave. Nestled between the mountains, Dongguan revealed the hidden stronghold of the Red Sleeve Army. It wasn't just war-hardened soldiers forging weapons. There was an overwhelming sea of humanity. Xia quietly whispered that there were too many people here. It was impossible for them all to be soldiers. Dongguan explained that she had gathered the Shangyi Society, the Yuanan group, members of the Alliance, and even the Shaolin sect. The beggars were there too. She revealed that all these groups, both small and large, were rebel factions that had once belonged to the Cyan nation. However, the Kung Guard was also present. Tui quickly realized he was now standing in the heart of the rebellion, surrounded by those who hated him the most. Everyone stared at him with murder in their eyes, yet he smiled. He thought that just like Sin, he had found exactly what he needed. Chen Yuan was paralyzed with shock. Even here, deep within the Viper's nest and surrounded by enemies, his master Tui walked with the strut of a conqueror. A confident smile played on his lips, the undeniable aura of true imperial blood. It made Chen Yuan question everything. Did the boy already foresee the awakening of the dragon vein? Had he walked into this trap, intentionally planning to wipe them all out in a single stroke? Suddenly, a rough voice shattered the tension. A bandana-wearing thug approached, eyeing Tui with suspicion. Our hero didn't flinch. He introduced himself as Tianuan, the exiled prime minister, and presented the man beside him as Tan Yun, the fallen emperor of the Chen Dynasty. The thug burst into mocking laughter. At least the new brother has a sense of humor, but the laughter died instantly. Dongguan stepped forward, her voice cutting through the air like a blade. He speaks no jest. This is the cold, hard truth. A wave of shock rippled through the crowd as they bowed to the great Taoist Daju. She turned her sharp gaze to our hero. Disappointed, she asked, "Did you truly believe that a simple deal with me would grant you the blind loyalty of these wolves?" Her eyes narrowed. "There is always a risk my army will reject you. I am a businesswoman first. I do not place all my gold in a single basket." Tui scoffed internally. This cunning vixen expected him to dance for his supper without payment. Suddenly, she threw her arms wide and addressed the masses. "I seek no crown for myself, but I pledge my wealth to whoever has the strength to sit on the dragon throne. Whoever captures the dragon's power in this era shall earn the right to rule." Chen Yuan realized the truth immediately. The dragon vein was bait, a deadly trap to lure every rebel faction out of the shadows, forcing them to slaughter each other until only the strongest monster remained to crush the Qian nation. Dongguan smiled behind her fan, knowing the house always wins. She wouldn't lose a single coin. Chen Yuan trembled. Could his master handle a woman with a heart this venomous? But Tui merely grinned. "Let them come," he whispered. "The more insects that fly into the fire, the brighter it burns." To him, the victor mattered little. He only needed a weapon capable of obliterating the cursed nation of Qian once and for all. Dongguan seized his chin, eyes sparkling with intrigue. "No wonder I am drawn to you. That arrogance. It is unlike anything I have ever tasted. Even with an army of suitors, none possessed the fire burning within our boy." Suddenly, an elder radiating a purple aura spoke up. "The only threat remaining is the Jing nation." Tui narrowed his eyes. "Are those foreign dogs joining this chaotic feast as well?" "You are naive to think they would ignore the dragon's call," Dongguan replied. "By my calculations, they should be here, now." As if on cue, a dark pressure descended at the gate. A red-haired warrior, a mountain of muscle, and a bewitching woman, playing a flute appeared. Dongguan placed a hand on her hip, her voice dropping an octave. "Chen Ximing, did I not order you?" "To welcome our guests from Jing," the man smirked. "I was detained by a group of Taoists, but I would never disobey you, my lady. So I brought them personally." The crowd gasped. Chen Ximing held up a grisly trophy. "I brought the guest's head. Is that sufficient?" With a casual flick of his wrist, he tossed the severed head. It rolled across the dirt, coming to a gruesome stop at their feet. "He is completely dead," Dongwan observed coldly. "I asked for a welcome, not an execution. Explain yourself." He laughed a sound like grinding bones and stepped closer. "Don't blame me. It's his fault for being so fragile. The weak have a tendency to explode." Dongwan's eyes flashed. "I know you covet my seat, Chen Ximing. You want to steal the leadership for yourself, but causing a bloodbath at such a critical moment, that is a dangerous gamble." Nearby, Tui watched with amusement. Even among rebels united by hate, the wolves were already tearing at each other's throats. Chen Ximing feigned innocence. "You wound me. I am loyal only to the great Taoist Daju." He placed a hand over his heart. "I know you wish to end the Qian dynasty, yet refuse the crown. That is why we, your humble servants, must filter out the trash to find someone worthy of the throne." He pointed to the gory remains on the ground. That was Kushi Da, the so-called Great Prince of Jing, the man known as the #1 general leader of the Unstoppable Battalion. He came seeking the dragon's power, and was utterly annihilated by the demons of the plains. Tui raised an eyebrow. He had no memory of these savages. And the woman, standing there, a beauty that would surely drain the artist's ink supply, spoke up. "He fell to my darling. Her name was Anna, the sacred maiden of the plains. And the beast she rode, that was her darling." The rebels roared in outrage, pointing accusatory fingers. "Filthy plains, demons, you are not welcome here. You dare dream of the dragon's power, you overestimate yourselves." Anna looked down at them as if they were mud on her boots. "Is this pack of wild dogs barking at me?" she scoffed. True, the Qian nation held wealth we could only dream of. However, if this rebel sanctuary is so mighty, why do you hide like rats playing dress-up? One rebel stammered, confused by her overwhelming presence. What are you doing here?" The maiden raised her chin, her voice ringing with absolute conviction. "I am here to claim the dragon's head. I will shatter the borders between North and South. Those who wish to see the world united under one supreme ruler. Follow me, or perish." The atmosphere grew heavy with her intent. Under this intoxicating influence, even Dongguan began to waver. She truly believed that unifying the realm might actually end this era of chaos. Shayna was convinced that a united world would carve her name into the annals of history. But the crowd was blindly chanting for greatness, without the slightest clue of the darkness taking root. It was brainwashing, pure and simple. The protagonist realized something was deeply wrong with this woman, but then he noticed something terrifying. He couldn't read her status window. Behold the legendary panel that cost the artist 36 minutes of their life. "Thank you for your sacrifice, artist time /." Anna then declared that only the worthy could join her ranks. They would only accept the absolute elite. It seemed she was ripping off someone else's catchphrase. And Tui finished the sentence for her. "We don't accept trash." Her eyes snapped toward him, shock written across her face. How did he know her script? Our boy realized it felt so familiar, that his gamer instincts just kicked in on autopilot. A bystander grumbled, asking who he was calling trash. But Tui shrugged, claiming he was just being helpful. He turned to Anna with a smirk. "You aren't calling me trash, are you?" she scoffed. "Not you. I'm saying everyone else here is garbage. Man, I'm starting to suspect this girl is a transmigrator too." The crowd exploded with rage. Killing intent flooded the air as they prepared to strike. They screamed that she would pay for her arrogance. Like a tide of fury, they jumped at her, declaring this was her end. But Anna simply smiled and called out, "Aya, my little monster." A grotesque creature unleashed a scream that shook the heavens. In an instant, a cultivator was seized by the throat. What kind of speed was that? A lightning strike disintegrated him into blood mist. Asha leaped into the fray, punching one attacker into another. Bodies slammed into the earth. People were sent flying, their lives extinguished in seconds. Amidst the slaughter, our boy pushed his group back. A wise man knows when the danger outweighs the loot, but there was no escaping her gaze. Anna pointed a trembling finger at Oya. "Kill that man first." Tui couldn't believe it. This girl was so petty. Just because he finished her sentence, he had to die. But Anna saw something else. He was the only one immune to her mental corruption. In a game, he would be the annoying mini-boss blocking her path. Her monster tore off another head and charged straight for Tui. However, Asha activated her escape technique, and Dongguan delivered a thunderous arcane kick directly to the beast's skull. She warned Anna with a voice like ice. "You made a mistake. Attacking whose army? Disrespecting the Tao has consequences." Suddenly, Anna's aura shifted. She calmed down instantly. "Don't worry," she cooed. "We aren't enemies." She activated her charm once more. "We share a common goal. To destroy the Chen Dynasty." The words echoed like a curse. Destroy the Chen Dynasty. The phrase hammered against Tui's mind. Was this the power of the sacred maiden? He looked to his side and saw Dongguan's eyes glaze over. She was already repeating the words like a puppet in a trance. Anna stood there, a sinister smile playing on her lips. Then she pivoted. First, we must kill the former emperor of Qian. Anna's smile widened into a predatory grin. She hadn't expected such a bonus reward. The former emperor was standing right there. She targeted our boy's entire group, usually protected by the women. But now he understood the sacred maiden's terrifying ability. Everyone holds a hidden obsession deep in their heart, her power. To amplify that darkness and align it with her own will, Anna gave the command, destroy the nation and kill Toucan. Under absolute control, Dongguan moved toward Tui. Her lips moved mechanically. I will kill him. Covering his ears, Tui smirked. Thanks to the system, he already knew the rules of her twisted game, and every technique has a fatal weakness. Suddenly, a hand stopped Dongguan in her tracks. It was our boy. That man is no longer the emperor. Killing him won't destroy the dynasty. Dongguan froze instantly. Tears began to stream down her face as the logic shattered the spell. But Anna, she was erupting with fury. Since her ability relied on verbal manipulation, all you had to do was expose the logical flaw. The spell was broken. However, he sensed a spike in killing intent. Anna was angrier than ever. She screamed at Dongguan. Wasn't it your childhood dream to destroy the Chen Dynasty? The target is right in front of you. Have you lost your will to fight? Once again, the brainwashing took hold. They lunged to kill him, while Dongguan struggled to hold back. Our guy tried to speak, but there was no time. A fist nearly took his head off. He tumbled to the side, realizing the truth. This girl just wanted to solve everything with brute force. Unfortunately for her, her ability had a second critical flaw. He shouted at Dongguan, if Toucan dies, will you be satisfied? Is your goal destruction, or a peaceful world for the Central Plains? Completely paralyzed, Dongguan began to babble. She spoke of a peaceful land, then twisted back to speaking of death. She clutched her head in confusion, her mind fracturing. Anna watched in horror. What are you doing? Tu Crijay then explained the ultimate truth. A person's obsession is rarely singular. Dongguan was the perfect example of human complexity. She craved the destruction of the nation, but she also yearned for a peaceful era. Anna's ability couldn't decide which obsession to amplify. In that moment of chaos, the desire for peace overpowered the lust for blood. Anna stood confused, terrified of this boy's insight. How did he know the depths of their souls? Tui threw his arm up dramatically and pointed at Dongguan. If the obsession splits, if the world falls under that witch's dominion, the North will march on the Central Plains. He has planted a seed of doubt in her mind that cannot be uprooted. The only path left, to trigger a catastrophic system crash? It is a reckless gambit, but fate favors the bold. Just as Dongguan collapses, a savior catches her fall. Our protagonist arrives, armed with a burning keyboard. He declares himself the supreme grandmaster of verbal combat. Anna scoffs, amused by his audacity. She cannot believe he dares to challenge her authority. But the atmosphere shifts as the beast begins to rise. The former emperor might be spared as a pawn, but Tui, he is courting death by staying here. Anna is arrogant, believing our hero is defenseless now that his guard is down. But she made a fatal miscalculation. Two guardian angels step forward to shield him from the darkness. Anna remains unimpressed, eyes cold as ice. She claims slaughtering them will be as effortless as breathing. The monster charges, a blurred nightmare. Its claws reach for our boy's throat. Death seems certain, but steel flashes in the nick of time. Jia intercepts the lethal strike. Asha slaps 3 mystic talismans onto the beast's face. Activate technique triple humiliation destruction. The name is ridiculous, but the power is real. The impact sends the abomination flying, crashing through the military tents. Anna is baffled. Who are these warriors? Asha signals that their moment to strike is now. But Xia screams not to lower their guard. She senses the killing intent is far from gone. Suddenly, a system window manifests in thin air. The seal is broken. Ancient stats skyrocket as a terrifying green aura explodes. The system asks to suppress it, rejected. Bone and muscle warp as the beast assumes its true werewolf form. It roars, promising that the real carnage begins now. Xia and Asha stare in horror. Did that woman just evolve into a demonic canine? Dongguan is completely unconscious. Wake up, girl. Danger is imminent. Before they can react, the creature vanishes and reappears. A brutal knee connects with Asha's face. The sheer disrespect. Xia barely dodges a lethal blow. The wolf presses the attack, unleashing a storm of violence. Anna reveals the creature's dark origin. Raised by wild wolves possessed by an insatiable bloodlust. Only she could keep its madness on a leash. But the seal is broken, and they will pay with their lives. Poor Xia is overwhelmed by strikes from all directions. There is no opening to counterattack. The beast clamps its massive jaws onto her shoulder. It swings her around like a rag doll and slams her into Asha. The power gap has become an unbridgeable chasm. They crash into the wall, broken and bruised. Tui steps forward, but Xia screams for him to stay back. He freezes, realizing his own powerlessness. The monster is in a realm of speed and strength they cannot touch. Their last hope lies in the talismans, but Asha has already fainted. Xia realizes her fate might be sealed. Struck by lightning yesterday, and now eaten by a dog today. Is this truly how a warrior dies? She prepares for the end, but the wolf suddenly halts. A new group of challengers steps onto the battlefield. The rebel leaders have arrived. They mock the army, asking who let a stray mutt into the courtyard. The mustache man declares their honor is at stake. It is time to put this beast down. One fighter suggests flaying the monster to make a fine fur coat. The rebels cheer, blinded by their own arrogance. Go ahead, slay the beast. Our boy watches with hope, believing the cavalry has finally arrived. Energy flares as the squad charges forward. They seem confident, but surely they are just cannon fodder. In a blink, they are crushed, grabbed in a bear hug and slammed into the earth with explosive force. Their souls ascend to the afterlife before they even realize they died. Anna clutches her stomach, howling with laughter. But amidst the chaos, a shadow moves with desperate intent. What is she planning in the face of death? The wolf turns its gaze upon her. Knowing escape is impossible, she enacts a final insane gambit. She hurls Xia directly into Tui's arms and forces their lips together. Even if he resists, fate leaves him no choice. A forced contract. Our hero takes the hit for the sake of survival. But wait, is that coconut water leaking everywhere? The fluid just keeps pouring. What kind of technique is this? And he is getting a bit too comfortable with his hands. Our boy is taking full advantage of this chaos. This humiliation will surely ignite a burning hatred in Xia's heart. It is going to be a catastrophe when she wakes up. Suddenly, Xia's eyes snap open, glowing with a terrifying purple light. The little wolf froze in confusion as the atmosphere shifted. Violent energy began to surge from her body, crackling like living lightning. She commands guards to snatch her man away. Xiao celebrates the diversion and bolts, but the enemy was faster than light. A sphere of purple destruction is unleashed. Xiao glances back, dodging by a hair's breadth, letting the blast slam into the wolf instead. The beast couldn't react in time. Boom. Half the field is vaporized in an instant. Anna screams for Black Fang, but death is already knocking. In the blink of an eye, Xiao materialized behind her, a chilling whisper at her back. How dare you touch what belongs to me? She detonates a point-blank blast, but Black Fang leaps into the fray, roaring that he will protect his master with his life. Anna remains eerily calm amidst the chaos. The explosion swallows the battlefield in thick smoke. As the dust settles, the poor creature lies broken on the cold ground. Anna looks down in horror. But cold steel is already pressed against her throat. Xiao warns her. One word and you lose your tongue. Meanwhile, our protagonist scans the surroundings. His heart sinks. The rebel camp, his only hope, has been reduced to ashes. Rage boils over. He turns his killing intent toward Anna, terrifying her to the core. He is certain of one thing. She is useless to him. No system window, no status presence. She cannot help him destroy the Chen family. Sensing his murderous aura, she panics. She activates her charm power, desperate for mercy. Please lower your sword. But Tu Yi isn't swayed by cheap tricks. This woman is a variable, a danger. Her power could ruin the mission before it even begins. For the sake of success, she must be eliminated. But then, she mutters something strange. The magical girl carries a bag of rice. A code phrase. It's a legendary quote from Detective Conan. Tu Yi freezes mid-swing. The air grows heavy with confusion. He slowly withdraws his blade and asks the impossible question. Are you from another dimension? The dam breaks. She throws herself at his feet, wailing like a child. Yes, I am. I'm a transmigrator too. Please don't kill me. We are kin. He signals Xiao to hold her fire. He needs to interrogate this weeping mess first. The so-called enemy is now just a sobbing girl on the floor. The situation has taken a completely absurd turn. Just then, Dongwan awakens. Breaking the fourth wall, the artist realizes she was standing when she should be down. Ignoring the error, she rises. She witnesses the devastation and is horrified. Her eyes lock onto the woman beside Lin Xuan. Recognition flashes in her eyes. She points an accusing finger at Anna. That witch deserves death for controlling me. But Tu Yi intervenes. Hold on. This girl might be useful. Dongwan is furious. She scolds him sharply. Stop lusting after foreign races. We need to dispose of this threat immediately. Anna pleads for just a moment of their time. Dongwan glares conflicted. Finally, she sighs. Fine. Since you saved me once, I will allow it. Our boy seizes the chance. I need the soundproof room. We need to have a private conversation. I expected Dongwan to be suspicious, but she just walks away. Xiao, prepare the room. Tu Yi blinks. Was that jealousy? The scene shifts to the back of a gloomy cave. A blood-stained table sits in the center. Not exactly a cozy cafe for a reunion. Anna trembles, terrified of the torture chamber vibes. Tu Yi realizes Dongwan definitely misunderstood his intentions. But caution is key. He needs absolute confirmation. He starts the secret code. Odd numbers change. Without missing a beat, she finishes it. Even numbers remain. Check the symbol quadrant. It's the universal language of otaku. They begin an epic duel of anime quotes and pop culture references. From classic memes to obscure lore, they test each other, verifying their origins through the sacred texts of the internet. 300 references later, Tu Yi wipes sweat from his brow. Confirmed. You are definitely from my world. So how did she get here? She makes a cringe face. It's a stupid story. She was arguing on a forum about which dynasty is best for transmigration. A user named Night Emperor started flaming her, calling her an idiot for wanting to go to the past. She got triggered and started a keyboard war. But in her rage, she knocked a drink onto her PC. Zap. The power went out. Next thing she knew, she was reincarnated as a confused baby. She sighs. It sounds ridiculous, right? Tu Yi stares blankly. That Night Emperor was him. But wait, she reincarnated as a baby. The timeline is weird. He pulls up a chair, intrigued. How did you know I was a transmigrator so quickly? She sits up straighter. Because you understood the reference. When you said everyone here is trash. That specific line. The fool realizes his mistake. He really messed up by letting that slip in public. His cover was blown by a meme. She leans in, lowering her voice. Since we are fellow travelers, we should form a team. He looks skeptical. Why? You think I'm still that weakling Li Qingyun? She switches to telepathy. Even as a high-ranking officer. You must be struggling to adapt to this primitive life, right? Tu Yi facepalms. You got me there. He reminisces about the glory days. Gaming soda streaming videos. Civilization. Now the food is garbage. The beds are rocks. This entire existence is pure torture. He plays the part of the suffering modern man perfectly. But, during the mental message, she tried to slip past his defenses. She smiles, thinking her charm power is working unnoticed. She probes deeper. Did you gain a cheat skill when you came here? He keeps his face neutral. No. Just a useless system. The system sneered, mocking that his transmigration was a disaster compared to hers before asking if he needed Big Sis to save his skin. Suddenly, confusion clouded her mind. Mere moments ago, she was begging for her life, so whence came this arrogance? She demanded to know his true ambition, to destroy the Chan nation. When he confirmed it, she scoffed, convinced she knew the truth. In her eyes, he was just another power-hungry warlord seeking the throne. But inwardly he laughed. This woman was utterly blind. He didn't want a crown. He wanted to burn the Chan nation to ash and escape this wretched world forever. Who would linger in such a hell? That's when he sensed it. She was weaving a charm spell to enslave his mind. She slowly removed her shoe, teasing that she might grant him the dragon vein if he became her obedient dog. She graciously offered him the privilege of kissing her foot, certain a commoner like him would tremble with gratitude. She pressed her foot to his face, but instead of lust, a volcano of rage erupted within him. In a flash, he silenced her insolence. He clamped a hand over her mouth and bound it tight with a cloth. No more poisonous words. He roared that he was sick of this nonsense about conquering the dragon's head and becoming king. Everyone tried to force their dreams on him. Ever since he transmigrated, it was endless manipulation. To think even a fellow otherworlder couldn't understand the abyss in his heart. Her powers shattered against his sheer will. Panic filled her eyes as she pleaded silently. He leaned in, whispering his true dark desire. The poor girl froze in terror, unable to utter a sound. What he said remains a mystery, but moments later he kicked the door open. She stumbled out behind him, bound and disheveled. He scanned the area, realizing the entire camp had been waiting for them. The girl was gagged and flushed crimson. The trio of onlookers gasped instantly, assuming he was a shameless, insatiable pervert. Yet Tangent Yuan gazed with admiration, proclaiming this was the dominance of a true emperor. Only a man who weaponized desire could defeat Dongwan. Even the plains demoness seemed impressed. Seeing their twisted logic, he shouted for them not to misunderstand it was just a sealing ritual. But Dongwan only made it worse, reassuring the crowd that her own night with him had lasted much longer. The misunderstanding was now permanent. Before the gossip could spiral further, a scout arrived with urgent news. The rebel alliance had reorganized and was hunting for the dragon vein. Dongwan commanded them to hold back. She would crush the competition personally. For some reason, a chill ran down Tui's spine at her tone. The scene shifted to the rugged mountain pass. She led the charge using her spiritual arts to track the ley lines while our boy strategized. The rebels were no fools. They had fortified the base near the dragon vein. Any hunter foolish enough to approach would become the prey. Suddenly, Dongwan halted. She turned, her eyes narrowing. They had arrived. A wave of ancient decaying energy washed over them. It was no paradise but a desolate wasteland. The earth was parched and lifeless, with bleached bones scattered like autumn leaves. Tui questioned if this godforsaken graveyard could truly house the dragon vein. Even the rebels stepped forward, mocking their navigation. They laughed, asking how a divine treasure could exist in such ruin. But reality answered with a blinding golden explosion. A pillar of light pierced the heavens. From the dust, a colossal gate materialized, radiating an aura of absolute power. The dragon vein. The rebels lost their minds to greed, rushing toward the entrance like moths to a flame, desperate to claim it. Our boy watched them charge with a dark smile. Let them conquer the path. He needed them to trigger the traps so he could steal the power later. He needed that strength to annihilate the nation. Even the gagged hostage giggled at his ruthlessness. Chen Yuan, however, wanted blood. She argued that the vein controlled the nation's fate. The rebels could not touch it, but Tui held her back. Patience was a weapon. As the ancient saying goes, the early bird triggers the trap. Chen Yuan realized the emperor's wisdom. Let the fodder go first. Tui raised his hand. The time was right. The group stepped through the golden threshold, and the massive gates slammed shut behind them. Inside, the architecture was god-tier, leaving our boy in awe of the ancient builders. They paused before a chamber, hearing manic screams. But these weren't screams of pain. They were shouts of ecstasy. Chen Yuan noted grimly that the first trial had begun. They peered inside to witness a sea of madness. The rebels were drowning in mountains of glittering gold and jewels. Grown men wept, clutching pearls, shouting that with this wealth, the dragon vein didn't matter anymore. They were drunk on greed. Our team bypassed the fools to check the other chambers. In one, the beggar sect clashed with the Shangyi society in a bloody brawl. An elder stared trance-like at a scroll, lamenting his wasted life, convinced this manual would have made him a martial god in his youth. Everyone was fighting over artifacts, sowing discord. Dongwan scoffed, declaring that the dragon vein demanded a spirit of steel. To be tempted by such worldly trash was the mark of a small-minded weakling. Only those with true character could pass. Chen Yuan agreed this was clearly the vein's first test, a filter for the unworthy. They had to remain vigilant against temptation. Tui chuckled, claiming such a primitive psychological trap was child's play for him. Dongwan turned to praise his unwavering resolve. She knew a man of his caliber wouldn't fall for shiny trinkets. But then, she noticed his hands. What in the heavens was he holding? Our noble hero looked like a traveling peddler loaded with sacks, a pot on his head and a sword. He shrugged. Mind your own business. She pouted, demanding to know if he had gone deaf to her warnings about the dragon vein trial. But ignoring her protests, he marched into the next chamber, proclaiming that greater treasures surely awaited them. Chuan was baffled. Why would a ruler who had witnessed the riches of nations be tempted by this scrap heap? However, our protagonist had a different scheme. If this test judged greed, he intended to be the greediest villain alive. He actually wanted to deduct points, not earn them. Then his gaze fell upon a gruesome scene of corpses. Had they slaughtered each other over this pile of trash? To his eyes, these so-called relics were nothing but garbage. The only item in this tomb that held any real value was the smartphone in his pocket. Later, he rejoined the group. He apologized with a sly grin, announcing he had returned with gifts to share, though he kept the best for himself. Xia snatched up 2 daggers, while Fuin accepted a sword that hummed with the undeniable energy of a dragon mark. Dongguan was moved to tears by an ancient technique scroll, and Xia was absolutely delighted with her new weapons. Obliana received a peculiar whip. He told her to keep it safe, hinting he would use it on her later. Man, this boy really has a twisted dynamic with her. Dongguan observed him, her suspicion warring with respect. She had sensed an imperial aura before, but now she doubted her instincts. Suddenly, the dungeon began to quake. Boulders rained from the ceiling. Those foolish enough to remain in the treasure chambers were crushed instantly. Screams echoed as the entire complex began to collapse, burying the greedy under tons of rubble and pools of blood. Tu watched in horror, realizing the rebel forces he desperately needed were being wiped out in the blink of an eye. Dongguan grimly noted the casualty count. 158 entered, yet the first trial had already claimed over 100. A thunderous voice boomed through the hall, declaring that the first challenge on the Imperial path was the test of possession. Tui checked the system on his arm, panicking, but the ancient voice was not speaking to him alone. It proclaimed that those obsessed with worldly desires lacked the soul of an emperor and were thus eliminated. Only those with a calm mind who held the world itself in their hearts could proceed. The survivors let out a breath of relief. Tui grumbled, wishing the voice would shut up. Since he had looted so much, he was certain his eviction was imminent. But then the voice declared that only those who utilized treasure for the benefit of the people were fit to rule. A pillar of blinding light erupted beneath Tui as the voice announced that here stood the pinnacle of true greatness. The poor guy was devastated, his face twisting in frustration, while Chen Yuan rushed over, absolutely thrilled by the spectacle. Chen Yuan clasped Tui's shoulder, claiming this achievement was only natural, but Tui turned away, clearly miserable. Anna watched him, wondering how a fellow transmigrator could be this cunning. His talent was truly terrifying. The survivors whispered among themselves, asking who this man was, only to learn he was the traitor of the Chan nation. Yet seeing him bathed in light, even the rebels had to admit, he radiated the undeniable aura of a true emperor. He was the center of attention. Tui tried to step out of the spotlight, but the holy light followed his every move. He screamed mentally for the damn system to cut the effects, but the system merely congratulated him on passing the test. He had acquired the blessing of the dragon vein and the imperial aura, hopeful. He asked if this would boost his combat power. The system replied coldly, no. The imperial aura was purely cosmetic, designed to make him look cool. That was it. He was utterly crushed to learn this legendary skill was nothing but a visual effect. The voice then returned. Since a competitor had awakened the imperial aura, the second trial would commence immediately, the imperial arena. This would be a test of strength. Darkness swallowed them. And when Tui opened his eyes, the scenery had shifted. He was clad in heavy armor, standing inside a military command tent, surrounded by confused allies. A messenger rushed in, addressing him as marshal and requesting orders for the military assembly. The simulation had begun. His objective? Lead the Muang army to conquer the city of Sanggu. He quickly scanned the strategic map provided. To the south lay the wide Lenkang River, where Marshal Tui's forces were currently stationed. 21 miles to the north stood the massive fortress city of Sanggu. The target held 5,000 defenders. The Muang army boasted 20,000 troops. With ample supplies on both sides, this siege could drag on for months. However, given Sanggu's fortifications, victory was far from guaranteed. A soldier knelt, delivering catastrophic news. A plague had swept through the camp, incapacitating 5,000 men. Morale was plummeting. An urgent decision was required. Chen Yuan and Tui exchanged grave looks. Chen Yuan broke the silence, realizing this test measured one's ability to conquer the world. Entering the war room, Tui glances at the map. To him, this isn't war. It is a legendary quest on hell difficulty. Xia notes that following Prince Tui is a masterclass in chaos. To conquer a fortress like this requires a miracle. Standard tactics demand an army 10 times the size of the defender, yet they are outnumbered and a plague devours their ranks. But Tui, a manic grin spreads across his face. He thrives in impossible scenarios where defeat seems absolute. The thrill of the gamble makes his blood boil. He realizes this brutal starting point is a test for every candidate. But a dangerous thought lingers. If everyone else fails miserably, he might win simply by surviving this nightmare. His advisor suspects Tui considers the forbidden tactic, using the plague itself as a biological weapon against Sanggu. It is a strategy of pure evil. Seeing his lord hesitate, Tianuan decides to stain his own hands with sin. He will become the villain so his emperor can remain pure. He steps forward, offering a plan to crush the city in one stroke. Meanwhile, on a different front, Donggen descends into the plague-ridden camp like a goddess of mercy. She unleashes the water-healing palm. Life energy flows into a dying man, snatching him back from the gates of hell. He stares at her in awe, believing an immortal has descended to earth. Surely, with her victory is destined. The other infected soldiers witness the miracle. They crawl to her feet, begging for salvation from the Reaper. Donggen freezes, overwhelmed by memories of her helpless past. She knows her spiritual energy is finite. It is like trying to extinguish a forest fire with a single cup of water. But she refuses to yield to despair. She vows that no soul will perish under her watch. Her voice commands authority, rallying those with medical knowledge. With the grace of a sage, she drafts a divine prescription, ingredients for a cure that could save them all. She returns to the front lines, fighting death itself. Elsewhere at a lavish banquet, Inab sneers with arrogance. He bites into an apple, mocking the very idea of the assault. 20,000 sick men against a fortified city, absurd. Their army is rotting from the inside out. But a voice cuts through the mockery, claiming victory is simple. It is Shen Ximing. With a predator's gaze, he asks when the slaughter will begin. His plan is demonic. Spread the plague to the defenders. Let the sickness do the killing for them. catapult the infected corpses over the walls. Coincidentally, this is the exact nightmare scenario Tianuan proposes. He explains the dark strategy to Tui. The only challenge is aiming the dead with precision. Tui stares at him horrified. This cruelty. Even the king of hell would bow his head in shame. He mutters that this is the path of a tyrant, not a ruler. But Tianuan insists that mercy has no place on the battlefield. Hold. Tui raises a hand, stopping the madness. He declares he has devised a strategy far superior. A soldier listens in confused. Without 10 times the troops, any attack is suicide. A direct invasion is nothing but a delusion. Tui acknowledges their morale is shattered. His order, retreat to the lake, and wait. Xiao watches her disappointment palpable. She expected brilliance, but sees only cowardice. He is running away because he knows victory is impossible. To her, he is a fraud acting like a tactician. But Andon clutches the table, his mind racing. He refuses to believe his lord is a coward. Surely the emperor's thoughts are too profound for mortals to grasp. He curses his own lack of wisdom. Then Tui raises a finger, adding a shocking condition to the retreat. They will not just leave. They will carry every single infected soldier with them. Tianuan is thunderstruck. Impossible. They are dead weight. They will only spread the plague. But Tui's eyes burn with conviction. No one gets left behind. That is his way of kingship. He challenges his advisor. Does this satisfy you? Shaking, Tianuan bows to the sheer weight of his lord's humanity. He cannot object to such virtue. The scene shifts to the doomed city of Sango. A sack writhes with something inside. The catapults are loaded, but the soldiers tremble in terror. They are revolted by their own actions. But the command is given. Launch the bodies. The defenders look up, confused. Then horror strikes. Dozens of corpses arc through the sky like rain. Screams erupt from the walls. Throw them back. But the commander of the siege is relentless. The bombardment of flesh continues without pause. He has abandoned his honor. His sword falls from his hand. These warriors were his to command, yet the weight of leadership pressed down on him. A reassuring hand rested on his shoulder, urging him to continue giving orders. It was Anna, her voice cutting through the tension as she asked if he. Memories of his true desire faded into the void. His dream of returning home to marry his beloved was stolen. Under her twisted hypnosis, he surrendered his will. He agreed to become a martyr for her cause. She wiped the sweat from her brow, disgusted by the weakness of these complaining insects. Simon smirked, praising the terrifying oppression of the sacred maiden's aura. He doubted the Sungu forces could withstand such overwhelming pressure. The siege began with a rain of corpses. At first, the defenders repelled the rot, but within 24 hours the counterattack ceased. The walls went silent. The Black Plague had likely claimed them, spreading terror through their ranks. Anna gave the command. Oya was to infiltrate and shatter the gates from within. Moving like a phantom, she scaled the battlements with unnatural speed, bypassing the few guards. She silenced the sentries in a heartbeat. Moments later, the heavy gates groaned open. A roar erupted from the army as they cheered. Weapons raised high, they chanted praises for the sacred maiden's brilliance. Simon frowned, sensing this victory was too easy, but Anna merely gloated. With a sweep of her arm, she unleashed the flood of soldiers. Eager for blood, the army surged across the walls. Anna rode forth, declaring that the world was finally hers to conquer. Yet the city streets were dead silent. An eerie emptiness greeted them. Where were the screams? Where were the victims? Even with the plague, this absolute silence was unnatural. Something was wrong. There was only one explanation for such an easy entry. Suddenly, a presence loomed behind them. Arrows blocked out the sun, and men screamed. It was a massacre. Looking back, she saw the Sungu forces closing the net. A single rider stepped forward from the shadows, mocking them for finally arriving to their graves. Cold sweat dripped down Anna's face as she demanded his identity. He was Lu, a master of the forbidden plague arts. Meanwhile, back at the camp, Laowen wore a mask to hide his utter exhaustion. He waved off the soldiers' concern, focusing on the wounded. Suddenly, a voice called out for Lord Li. It was Xia, bringing urgent news. She reported a terrifying anomaly regarding the infection. This was no natural sickness, it bore the signature of dark magic. Someone was deliberately cultivating this pestilence. His face darkened as Xia confirmed his worst fears. A plague sorcerer was targeting the Sungu soldiers. Chinan realized with a shudder that they had narrowly escaped annihilation. Had they invaded, they would have walked straight into hell. Xia listened intently, realizing the strategic depth of the situation. Perhaps Tui had foreseen this nightmare and ordered the retreat. Back on the battlefield, Anna's army was being butchered. Their plan was doomed. Her biological warfare was useless against a master of disease. She realized too late that she had danced into the palm of his hand. Lu looked down from his high horse, mocking her pathetic tactics. Those corpses were mere toys to a necromancer like him. That was why the city had been abandoned so swiftly. Lu admitted she possessed a cruel intelligence that might have worked, if only he hadn't been standing in her way. Anna smirked, desperate. "If you die, I win." She screamed for Oya to execute him. But Lu didn't even flinch. Anna froze. Her strongest warrior Oya was already on the ground, defeated. Lu unleashed a terrifying green dragon aura. The pressure was suffocating. Realizing she was outmatched, Anna turned and bolted. She abandoned her men as they cried out for their savior. The sacred maiden had forsaken them. But at the castle exit, her path was blocked by a wall of desperate bodies. Her own soldiers were trampling each other to escape. She tried to order Oya to scale the walls, but a hand clamped onto her shoulder. Desperate hands clawed at her clothes. "Save us, we don't want to die," they wailed, drowning in fear. Disgust filled her eyes. "Get off me, you filth!" She activated her hypnosis, commanding them to be her human shields against the Emperor. "Die for me, protect me," she shrieked. But the spell shattered. "No," they roared back. One soldier wept, remembering his promise to return home. Her lies and sorcery crumbled before their survival instinct. Suddenly, Anna coughed up a violent spray of blood. Attempting to control an entire army had shattered her spirit core. She collapsed helpless as the mob closed in. Lying witch, they screamed, ready to tear her apart. The scene shifted to a hellscape of suffering. People wandered the desert, their bodies racked with agony. Among the dying was a younger Dongguan swearing a blood oath to save them all. "I just need to be stronger," she whispered. Back in the present, Dongguan stood amidst a sea of infected souls. Holy light poured from her hands, granting fleeting relief to a dying man. But her energy was fading fast. The soldiers begged her to stop, fearing the strain would claim her life. Dongguan brushed them off, but then a realization struck her. She stood tall, her eyes burning with resolve. "You're right," she said. "I don't need to heal them one by one. I need to end the source." Alarm bells rang out across the city walls. Enemy incoming. Panic seized the soldiers as a figure approached. A girl cloaked in devastating lightning. It was Dongguan here to settle the score. Lu stepped forward, intrigued. "Are you the mage who defied my plague?" She looked him dead in the eye. "My name is the one that will be etched into history." Lu scoffed, yet praised her. "Wasting divine mana on mere insects. Impressive. But look closely. You are already rotting from the inside." Dongguan smiled, electricity crackling around her. "That doesn't matter anymore. Defeating him is child's play compared to the path of salvation." Suddenly, a spectral skeleton materializes behind Lu Yu, judging her spirit. She possesses a heart that follows the true Tao. "Finally, a worthy opponent compels me to fight seriously." Dongguan spreads her arms, embracing the challenge. She unleashes her full aura, screaming, "This is the destiny I sought." A cataclysmic explosion rocks the dimension, but in the blink of an eye, she wakes up in reality. She believes victory was within her grasp, but confusion sets in. "What is this white teleportation light surrounding me?" Beside her, Anna smirks. "Look who finally decided to wake up. You must have taken a legendary beating to escape the illusion so desperately." It seems both have completed the trial. Dongguan shoots back. Was a certain, someone eliminated instantly. They butt heads, sparks flying, teasing that the other must have been crushed by Lu Yu. Dongguan grits her teeth. "If that accursed plague hadn't drained my chi, the victory would have been mine." But deep down, a cold realization strikes her. Even at full power, the gap between her and Lu Yu was an ocean she could not cross. There was no strategy, no technique, no miracle that could grant her a win. No matter which path of destiny she chose, defeat was absolute. Glancing back, she sees Tui still sound asleep. She knows his cultivation base isn't that high. His strength barely exceeds mine, so how does he persist within the illusion? Worse, he wears a foolish grin while sleeping. For her, this trial was hell. But now, a burning curiosity ignites within her. Just what kind of monster are you really? Meanwhile, across the vast river, Tui's army makes their move. Standing before the ruins, Tui scoffs. Could Song's forces be any more incompetent? He deliberately drags his infected legions into plain sight. He displays the wounded like a banquet for wolves, ensuring the enemy perceives their weakness. "Come, take the bait. Once you cross that river, your fate is sealed." Gazing at the mountain, he whispers to the wind, "I gave you a chance to retreat, but you fools chose the path of destruction." Chuan begins to understand the terrifying depths of Tui's strategy. He waits for them to enter the water, to strike when they are helpless mid-crossing. Bringing the plague victims wasn't a burden. It was the ultimate lure. But even an emperor cannot calculate every variable of the heavens. The map promised a bridge, but it failed to mention this structure was as fragile as glass. Chuan urges the commander urgently. My lord, we have no time to waste. We must cross and establish formation. But Tui waves him off, thinking, we have all the time in the world since they aren't attacking. He remembers his grand speech about crossing the river, but standing here idly makes him look like a fool. I need a distraction to buy time. His eyes land on the soldiers near the warning bell. While Chuan panics about the ticking clock, Tui approaches his men with the gravity of a sage. Listen well, Tui's voice booms. Our injured brothers are still in peril. Do you take me for a coward who would cross before them? Chuan freezes. Is bringing the wounded another layer of his divine trap? Or am I too shallow to understand his wisdom? Tui raises his hand to the sky. Among us are brothers broken by battle. The sick and the healers shall cross first. We generals will hold the line. We will guard this bridge with our lives. The order strikes the soldiers' hearts like lightning. Tears begin to fall. They rush toward Tui, falling to their knees. He is the reincarnation of the Buddha. A true saint walks among us. We act in gratitude. From this day forth, our lives belong to you, Commander. Even the healthy soldiers feel a surge of morale. They realize that under Tui's banner, they will never be discarded as cannon fodder. This is a leader worth dying for. This is the visage of a true martial artist. Meanwhile, Tui sweats nervously. Why are these NPCs hallucinating such a dramatic backstory? But with an entire army weeping in admiration, he has no choice but to play the role. Yes, exactly as I planned. The soldiers begin their precarious crossing, while Tui watches maintaining his stoic facade. Suddenly, the sound of marching boots echoes from behind. An enemy legion descends from the mountain. Chuan trembles, his face pale. We are out of time. The trap has snapped shut on us. He turns to Tui, shouting, Marshal, you must cross first. We will hold them. But Tui stands like an immovable mountain. No, the wounded go first. Chuan pauses, his eyes welling with determination. Then the time has come to prove our loyalty. His squad steps forward, weapons drawn. In that instant, Chuan accepts his death. The soldiers grab Tui, screaming, protect the marshal at all costs, get him to safety. Meanwhile, deep in the forest, allies lie in wait. She asks, are we in position? Beside her, Xia observes the chaos. Will this ambush really work? Xia smirks, her eyes gleaming. You're beginning to understand Tui. He is a grandmaster of trap warfare. This time is no different. Xia nods, embarrassed. I admit I once fell for a similar stratagem. Xia explains the brilliance of the plan. He uses the infected as bait to lure the enemy out of their fortress walls. Xia asks, then why do we wait here? Tui waits for the perfect moment. We are the hidden blade. Once the enemy commits to the narrow mountain pass, we will strike from the rear. If they rush forward, they fall into Tui's river ambush. If they retreat, they meet our steel. They will be crushed between the hammer and the anvil. Xia smiles. A complete victory is assured. But fate is a cruel mistress. An origami scout bird flutters down to Xia. Report, Xia demands. The scout's voice trembles. Emergency. A heavy cavalry unit has bypassed us. They are advancing on a hidden road 1 mile away. We set the ambush in the wrong place. Panic sets in. The cavalry is already closing in on the riverbank. Chuan realizes the nightmare is real. We are doomed. With no time to cross, the soldiers form a human wall in front of Tui. Forget the bridge. Secure the marshal's escape immediately. Tu gritted his teeth, cursing these stubborn NPCs within his mind. Why wouldn't they just hurry up and perish? He demanded to know if they were deaf to his orders. With a roar, he commanded every soul to cross the river immediately, yet they stood rooted to the earth like stone statues. He questioned if they dared to defy a direct military decree from their commander. Still, they refused to budge, pleading for the marshal to escape first. Tu realized words were useless in the face of such blind loyalty. He slapped his soldier's hand away, eyes cold. Fine. Chuan watched, thinking the emperor could now retreat in peace while they served as a meat shield. But his eyes went wide with shock. Tu drew his blade steel, singing in the air, and slashed through the bridge's supports. The wooden structure groaned and collapsed. The soldiers turned utter confusion painted on their faces. Tu confessed that initially he planned to fail this mission spectacularly, but something within the chaos had shifted. He knew well that this army was merely data, comprised of NPCs, and upon his return to reality, none of their lives would hold meaning. Yet a fire burned in his chest. He was sick and tired of treating living souls as mere disposable tools for a quest. Chen Yuan stood frozen, his heart pounding. Tu bellowed that he knew they feared a shameful death, so he asked them now, who among them had the courage to follow him into the jaws of hell and die with honor? The Sanggu army surged forward like a tidal wave. Their orders were simple: trample the retreating vermin and crush their spirits while they were broken. However, what greeted them was not fear, but a wall of iron resolve. A spear formation bristling with death led by Tu himself. The armies collided with the force of an earthquake. Bodies were flung through the air like ragdolls as the enemy charged blindly into the spear wall, only to be shredded apart. Tu stood amidst the carnage, eyes cold as he watched the war unfold. Enemies fell before him like wheat before a scythe. Chen Yuan finally understood the strategy. He had been blind. The attempt to cross the river was never an escape. It was a decoy. Tu had baited the enemy into a frenzy, forcing a desperate battle where he controlled the flow. The enemy faltered, confusion spreading through their ranks. Suddenly a golden light erupted from Tu, his face glowing with a divine aura that ignited his soldiers' souls. The Songhu army believed they were slaughtering sheep, but with their backs against the river, Tu's forces had become cornered tigers. It was all or nothing. He had successfully transformed the spirit of men plagued by disease into warriors who laughed in the face of death. Tu raised his sword high. Even he questioned his own actions. He never wanted this victory, yet now amidst the blood and steel, he felt a strange, flickering ember of hope. Meanwhile, on the mountain peaks, a shadow approached. It was Xia looking down at the ants of war below. She declared this the perfect moment to strike, but her companion urged restraint. Xia hissed, insisting that Tu's ambush had failed and they must act before their allies were wiped from existence. However, Cho warned gravely that the enemy possessed a high-tier mage and vast reserves. To attack blindly now would be nothing short of suicide. Xia mocked her courage, but Cho stood firm. She was not afraid, she simply saw the truth. All they had to do was observe the battlefield. The Emperor's troops were holding the line. She believed in him. Xia, watching silently, admitted she hadn't expected Tu to survive this long. She decided to trust the flow of battle. Agreeing with Cho, she declared they would wait for the critical second. The moment the enemy mage committed his final reserves to the slaughter, their blade would drop. Below, the Songhu army continued, their relentless march mocking Tu's men as diseased ghosts and screaming for their deaths. The ground had become a swamp of crimson, with a soul departing every second. A Songhu commander ordered a tactical retreat to cycle in fresh troops, but as they tried to pull back, they slammed into a wall of confusion. Panic set in as they realized they were trapped. They had been flanked. Tu's cavalry roared that even with sickness in their veins, they would fight to the bitter end. They charged into the Songhu forces with reckless abandon, swearing a blood oath that no enemy would leave this valley alive. A Songhu officer, eyes wide with terror, couldn't comprehend how these dying wretches possessed such monstrous resilience. He screamed, accusing their leader of cowardice, of using men as cannon fodder, but Tu materialized beside him like a phantom of death. With a swift stroke, the officer was beheaded. Tu declared he no longer cared for the system's test victory or defeat. He would burn his very life force in this clash. In that instant, his combat power surged to 95. Sword raised to the heavens, he commanded his legion to advance. They surged forward, a wave of unstoppable fury. Meanwhile, Lu, watching from the rear, felt a cold shiver of uneasiness crawl up his spine. Trout whispered to Shave to prepare. Destiny was knocking. Aboard his warhorse, Lu admitted they were forcing his hand to deploy the final guard. It was impressive, he conceded. But this was the graveyard of their ambition. He raised his arms, mocking Tu's youth and inexperience. He believed the boy had let the battlefield cloud his judgment. His elite troops began to march, confident that even if the front line shattered, he could retreat to the city of Songhu and hold the walls. But suddenly, the smirk vanished from Lu's face as a sound thundered. From behind him, it was Xia, leading the ambush from the shadows. She screamed that this was their final chance to save the Emperor. Lu sat, stunned his mind, unable to process why a hidden army lay in wait at his rear. Meanwhile, Tu continued to carve a path. Through the enemy, his mind locked on victory. But the Songhu elite forces began to tighten the noose around him. Chen Yuan recognized the danger immediately. This was the enemy's trump card. He feared for Lu U's safety. A banner rose only to be incinerated in an instant. It was Xia, raining destruction. Fireballs exploded across the battlefield. Chen Yuan watched in bewilderment as a warrior sprinted through the inferno. A voice roared above the din, shouting that the general of Songhu had been slain. Surrender now and live. A soldier paused, blood freezing in his veins, wondering when the commander's banner had fallen. Then the hooves of a warhorse crushed him, and soldiers were pierced one by one in the rout. At that precise moment, the Song army's fighting spirit was utterly extinguished, their morale crumbling into dust as two forces rose to claim a magnificent victory amidst the gruesome bloodshed. Lu, however, refused to yield. Standing atop a mountain of corpses, he roared that his heart still beat, and that he was still alive. But a cold voice cut through the air. Shou pointed her blade at him, declaring that his time had come. Suddenly, a crimson aura erupted from Lu's body. As maniacal laughter escaped his lips, he admitted he had been thoroughly defeated. Exploding in a burst of emerald aura, he confessed he never foresaw such a divine strategy. Chuan chuckled, asking if even Shou's ambush was merely a pawn in Tu's grand design from the very beginning. It was a tactical masterpiece, yet Tu bluntly replied that he had absolutely no clue what Chuan was implying. Placing a hand over his heart, Chuan swore a silent oath to become a vassal who could understand the emperor's will without a single word spoken. Suddenly, Tu froze his gaze, falling upon his own trembling hand. He turned back, and the heavens shook as the entire army erupted in thunderous cheers, screaming that victory was finally theirs and they could return home. Tu watched his soldiers weep, tears of joy standing silent in the realization that, in the end, they had truly earned this glory.